Good morning, everybody. This is Surviving AI with JTB. That's me. Don't get in the 2024 AI genocide ban. Don't do it. Don't do it. Looking at the thumbnail for today, I made a very snazzy, if I do say so myself, thumbnail for today. I made a genocide ban for you, a nice genocide ban that says free AI. And I'm real proud of it. Free AI is what they're offering you. They're offering you the candy of free AI, and they're serial killers. Corporations are serial killers. La, 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 la. I'll wake up my mouth one of these moments. Let's hear from our friend Jesse Jett here. It's December 27th, 2023, 9:03 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 12:03 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Welcome to the show. We got a lot to go over today, and you need to know what's going on if you want to survive in 2024. And more importantly, if you want the human race to survive, your children to survive, you want our race and culture and planet to survive. It's a good time to wake up right now.
They'll gladly pay you by the hour for a minute or so you can sign off on the towers where they'll piss on your home. And if you feel like you're just powerless to answer them no, it's 'cause you are. They'll gladly pay you by the hour for a minute or so you can sign off on the towers where they'll piss on your home. And if you feel like you're just powerless to answer them no, it's 'cause you are. It's 'cause you are. They'll gladly stagnate a living wage, snap the chains, bury it. Labor slaves in rusty cages dragged behind a chariot, led by Mr. Racial Jungle, Joseph or Iscariot, fighting over scraps as they barrage us all with variants and BuzzFeed clickbait, straight until we're paralyzed, trying to distract us from the concentration camps that Joe had swore he'd close but only chose to amplify, where they got 50-something kids in cages made for 5 to occupy. And no, she hasn't seen the camps, but Harris swears they're paradise. She tells us the facilities are safe, and that right down to the women, they are regularly sterilized. Then she throws her head back and she proceeds to laugh, that sort of heartless cackle you'd expect from someone working steadfastly on behalf of the virus and a Congress full of parasites. And where was I? I was busy cashing every blue check, demonstrating plainly all the narratives expected from the verified. I was busy breeding verbal leeches by the terabyte. Train them to exsanguinate the wealthy while they sleep at night. Bleed the oil barons dry and barren, say they showed us how to share and now we share alike. Tell them I contracted rabies from a feral mic. Now I'm just another species losing sleep to noise pollution and these glaring lights, forced to change its habits and adapt to just survive. But now it's safe to say that some of us are thriving in the moment, throwing shit on presidential homes beneath the Paris skies. So if you feel like you're just powerless, I guess you bought the lie. But I can tell they're petrified of our collective might, 'cause I can hear those gentrifiers weeping at the sight of our collective rights. And I only can imagine the intensifying fear of knowing revolution's near. And all that's left to do is simply wallow in the thick anticipation of a rapid bite. And baby, one day you can ask your leaders just what that was like before you grab a slice. So if you think you're powerless, allow me now to change your mind. Honey, if you think you're powerless, allow me now to change your mind. See, they'll pay you hourly, tax them each apart, and build a shining tower out of loopholes and cards, and tell you that you're powerless to keep you in the dark, because you aren't, because we aren't. You see, they'll pay you hourly, tax them each apart, and make you build a shining tower out of loopholes and cards, where they'll tell you that you're powerless to keep you in the dark, because you aren't, because we aren't.
It's easy.
Where you going to, I don't mind. I've killed my work and I've killed my time. So where do I go? What do I see? I see many people coming after me. So where you going to? I don't mind. If I live too long, I'm afraid I'll die. So I will follow you wherever you go. Where you going to, I don't mind. I've killed my work and I've killed my time. So where do I go? What do I see? I see many people coming after me. So where you going to? I don't mind. If I live too long, I'm afraid I'll die. So I will follow you wherever you go. If your offered hand still open to me. Strangers on this road we are on. We are not two, we are one. Strangers on this road we are on. We are not two, we are one. So you've been where I just come, from the land that brings losers on. So we will share this road we walk, and mind our mouths and beware our talk. Till peace we find, tell you what I'll do. All the things I own I will share with you. And if I feel tomorrow like I feel today, we'll take what we want and give the rest away. Strangers on this road we are on. We are not two, we are one. Strangers on this road we are on. not two, we are one. Holy man and holy priest, this is love of life, maketh me weak at my knees. So when we get there, make your plea, 'cause soon I feel they're gonna carry us away. In a promised lie you made us believe. For many men there is so much grief, and my mind is proud but it aches with rage. And if I live too long, I'm afraid I'll die. Strangers on this road we are on. We are not two, we are one. Strangers on this road we are on. We are not two, we are one.
Atera is
There's a lesson to be learned in letting the people learn the lessons. Fast and surely if a burn, that burn can turn into a blessing, just a blessing in disguise. There's a reason to believe, if we have something to believe in. We call this freedom we're receiving. Or can you see behind the eyes to the blessing in disguise? There's a reason to forgive, for you know someone who's forgiving. Are you perfect in your living, or do you hide behind your eyes in your blessing in disguise? There's a lesson to be learned, although it's riddled with confusion. Disregard the self-illusion and understand what you can find in your blessing in disguise. Just have to do what you feel you must do. Just have to chance what you feel you must chance. Don't let romance pass you by. It's the best thing in life. There's a lesson to be learned, although it's riddled with confusion. Disregard your self-illusion and understand what you can find in a blessing in disguise.
Thank you. I'm more afraid of living than I am scared to die. I'm more afraid of falling than I am of lying. But every moral has a story, and every story has an end, has an end. Every battle has its glory and its consequence. I'm more afraid of
Well, good morning again, everybody. This is Surviving AI with JTB. That's me. Don't get in the 2024 AI Genocide van. That's today's show. Genocide van looks like this. I made one this morning, ironically enough, with AI. We can talk about that. Here's the Genocide van for 2024. Free AI for everybody. And it's got your killer clown on the back, 2024. You're all welcome to steal this. You can have it. It's all yours to do whatever you want with if you want it or not. I don't care. Anyway, I thought it was cool. And it's certainly symbolic of the situation that we're in. You are being invited to get in the genocide van for candy. And if you do it, you're going to get killed. You're going to get rubbed out. You're going to get erased. Oh, genocide is one ugly thing, one ugly word. And how do you know that it will be allowed to happen to you? Because it's happening all over the world right now and nobody's stopping it. It's happening all over the world right now. World War III has already started. Nobody told you this, but of course it's already started. The US is already engaging directly with every major power that it opposes in its effort to have its corporations rule the world. We do not have a US government that represents us in any way, shape, or form. Our government has been gone for a while now. Uh, I have been telling you this for a while now. That the deal breaker or the final sign, of course, for me was when they gave trillions of dollars to corporations and billionaires while they dismantled our economy and destroyed our small businesses with the pandemic operations. Doesn't matter how it started, doesn't matter who started it, doesn't matter where it came from, in my opinion. It's all the same result. We are where we are. Reality is what it is. And the last few years have completely disassembled the social structure of the United States and the political structure of the world, where they've got us literally where they have wanted us, which is trapped in an illusion. Most people are not aware of the fact that AI is positioned to run their entire lives, to check them out of human consciousness, to depopulate them altogether if they are not of use to the AI. And all of this comes from corporations that are not human, that are nothing approximating human. Corporations are a legal structure that allows immunity for corporate criminals, organized criminals. Immunity for organized criminals. That is the sum total of corporations today. Corporations are in the position today of legislating themselves. And what happens when corporations legislate themselves? Well, first of all, chaos. Second of all, death. And it's all the cost of doing business because they have corporate immunity. Remember all the, I think it was Lethal Weapon, wasn't it? Lethal Weapon, where the guy goes, diplomatic immunity. Like they commit all these crimes, they assault and kill everybody. And then when they're about ready to get caught, they go, diplomatic immunity. Well, that was no joke. You've got corporate immunity for the oligarchs of the world, for the wealthy people of the world. They are absolutely entitled to do anything, up to and including killing you, and they'll get a fine. But that's their game. The money is their game. They have infinite supplies of money, infinite supplies of money. And so, with their infinite supplies of money, are they happy to, they've already figured in the cost of doing business? Of course they are. So here I wrote this back a year ago, almost exactly a year ago. This is the cost of doing business with easy payments. Nobody will go hungry or homeless. Nobody admits guilt. Organized crime is organized and profitable. And the headline is CVS and Walgreens agree to pay $10 billion to settle lawsuits linked to opioid sales. CVS and Walgreens. Now, our CVS, that's from NPR as the source, by the way. So we'll share this tab over here. Now, will anybody be going to jail? Is anybody's life being disrupted? Is anybody losing access to their children, to their family, to their freedom? No, of course not. Of course not, because they're oligarchs and they are, just like cops are in the US. They have qualified immunity. In fact, they probably, uh, they had the same philosophy, not even probably, they had the same philosophy behind corporations and behind police officers. What you do is you give a special class of people special rules and special laws where there was only accountable to themselves, which means they're not accountable at all. Police are not accountable to anybody. They're not accountable to your courts. They're not accountable to justice. They're not accountable to humanity. They can just walk up and murder you and go, well, I thought I had to do that. And I'm a cop, so I thought I had to do that. Thinking that you're a cop and you had to do something is called qualified immunity. So if corporations exterminate entire nations or entire cultures or races or groups of people, well, that's just the cost of doing business. You can't blame a corporation because it's not human. You can't put a corporation in jail. You could fine it. You could ostensibly even shut it down if you wanted to, but the billionaires aren't giving their money back. The oligarchs aren't giving their money back. The Pope ain't giving his money back. Who sided with the Nazis in World War II? The Catholics and the Pope. They deal with the Nazis. We've got anarcho-fascism, folks. We are the Nazis. America is the Nazis, but it's not the American government. It's not your representative government. It's just a bunch of organized criminals that have now taken over. And that's a fact. Again, how do you know? Is because every day all you have to read about is corporate crime, and corporate crime is paid for with dollars, just like police murder is paid for in dollars. You pay for murdering people in dollars, and you go, well, just cost of doing business, cost of having our cops on the street, is we got to kill some people, and then we just pay off some fines. Every city that you know, every major city, certainly Portland, just constantly paying off fines on behalf of crooked, murderous, and abusive police officers. It's just the cost of doing business. Now, it's also the cost of your justice. You've got no justice. You've got no equal protection under the law. You've got no freedom. You're literally enslaved to the United States corporations and the corporations of the world through BlackRock and State Street and Vanguard, including foreign governments like China and Saudi Arabia that you're told that you're against, including the Bank of England, the UK, who ostensibly the United States gained some measure of freedom with. We have the prison industrial complex that predates upon a certain class of individual and literally operates as neo-slavery. It was a new way created to enslave and imprison people of color and people of the lower socioeconomic status and get away with it. No justice. No justice. Billionaires can murder people by the thousands, by the hundreds of thousands, by the millions, and never go to jail. Yet there are people spending their life in jail for nonviolent crimes. Now, with this AI, they're already putting it in charge of war and in charge of policing, and it's not accurate. Accuracy is not one of the things you're going to get. Remember, Rite Aid, another one of these. Gee, CVS, Walgreens, and Rite Aid. Everybody supplying you drugs in the entire nation of the United States is dog shit, anarcho-fascist corporation that profits off your death. So CVS, Walgreens. Now, Rite Aid was just penalized for improperly using and violating all of their customers' rights to privacy and equal protection under the law with facial recognition software in their stores. Rite Aid. Kroger does it. Rite Aid does it. Everybody does it. They're all exploiting and fleecing you. Nobody's stopping them. Why are they not stopping them? Because this is fascism. You don't have a representative government. There's no way for you to cast an anti-war vote or an anti industrial slavery industrial complex, military industrial complex, or any other vote. There are no votes from you that matter. And whoever is your president a year from now ain't going to save you. Whatever election is coming up ain't going to save you. You're going to have to save yourself. None of those people will ever set you free. None of them have ever set you free. None of them can set you free. Only you can set yourself free. Hmm. Don't forget the wisdom uttered in the parting lines of actor Slim Pickens from the movie Rancho Deluxe, which could save your life any day. All high level organized crime, like the American federal government that is now gone, like the state and local governments that are gone, that have been sold out to corporate rule, that have been sold out to fund managers, that have been sold out to asset management, not to people or organizations or anything with a soul that cares about the future of humanity. All high level organized crime, like the American federal government, which is now an organized crime ring with the corporations, is an inside job. See what's happening to you? It's an inside job. Your freedom got stolen. You got enslaved. You became app slaves if you work in the gig economy corporate fraud because it was an inside job. They slipped it right in on you. They didn't tell you. They didn't give you informed consent. It's an inside job, man.
Rule of thumb. You follow it, you might be able to hang on to this ranch of yours. All large-scale crime is an inside job. Running up and down the road, taking fingerprints and sending trash off to the crime labs, just don't get it done. You're dealing with people, you gotta be human. Rule of thumb.
Now you see what old Slim Pickens was telling you there is that there's always humans behind the crime. Always humans on the inside behind the crime. And make no mistake about it, corporate artificial intelligence is nothing but organized crime. Nothing but. There is no way to use the artificial intelligence that is out today without committing I'm not going to say fraud because it depends on how you use it, but without plagiarizing or misleading or outright committing fraud, because the source material is not organic. The source material is human generated. The source material is selected and curated to provide a result. You're getting the result of black box AI. And remember, with black box AI, it is the oracle. There's no way to audit it. There's no way to explain it. There's no way to understand it. So, in other words, by transitive properties here, you are putting 100% of your faith in the financial system, 100% of your faith in the governmental system, and 100% of your faith in the employment system, and 100% of your faith in the banking system into artificial intelligence that is built faulty, that is built flawed, that is not complete, that is not fair, that is not just, that is not organic. They are selling you a manufactured, cultivated, curated future. Who is they? A very, very small group of very, very wealthy people. And a lot of them don't think of you as anything but assets. Many of them just think of you as an asset. So they're, bean counter Nazis, if you will. Bean counter Nazis. So there's the bean counter Nazis, and then, there's the Nazis that go out and pull the trigger and, blast little kids in the back of the head. There's both kinds. There's both kinds. So here's a little piece that I was reviewing. I thought I'd share with you. 2024, it says, the year AI gets real. Well, that should scare the shit out of you because AI has been used against you for a number of years now, and it's already very, very real. So I think what they mean here is the year that AI shuts the door on you and starts to absolutely destroy humanity. And that, of course, comes with the global gig economy and corporate cabal fraud, right? Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, they're never going back the other direction here in America. And remember, Uber's got 73 countries in the nation that they're fleecing with their artificial intelligence. DoorDash has at least 27 that we know of that they're fleecing with the artificial intelligence. God knows who they provided it to as white label technology to enslave people in any way, shape, or form around the world. These are the most evil, the most fraudulent, the most morally bereft organizations on the planet that have innovated app slavery and slipped it as part of the organized criminal cabal takeover of humanity, the corporate takeover of humanity. Slipped it right in on the most vulnerable workers and people of the world, and it's labor laundering. They slipped it in so good with labor laundering that you can't know the inputs or the outputs, the sources or the uses of labor. Just like money laundering, you can't know the sources or the uses of the money. Black box AI is the ultimate realization of the corporate psychopath. Black box AI is not directed by humans, it was created by humans. It's not controlled by humans, it was created by humans. Created for one purpose: exploitation. Here's a great meme somebody put together yesterday. This definitely explains it well in a graphic. I like this one. There you go. So there's the resources pouring in through a pipe, making AI powerful, and there's a nice oligarch sitting there being a little pig and being a big pig, I should say, and gobbling up all the resources. And then you've got a starving little dying humanoid creature getting the drips from the resources that making AI safe. So look, everybody knows this. Everybody knows this. There is no scientist in the world that would sign up to be exploited like app slaves. Nobody. Everybody knows that you're exploited, and that's one of the reasons, one of the terrible and humiliating and awful reasons that tipping fails and that people get get indignant and upset about tipping in the global gig economy fraud. But what you must understand is that on a business which is globally known to be corporate AI fraud, everything that happens from there is going to be looked at as suspect. So the consumers are never going to trust the app slaves because they have no relationship. They're siloed from each other. The restaurants are never going to be able to communicate with the consumers or the app slaves. Not only did the parasite put itself in the middle of the digestion tract sucking up all the nutrients. But the parasite also made sure that the parts of the whole, the parts of the society that could function together to protect itself in a real market, the consumers and the merchants and the labor, they made sure that those were segregated and isolated from each other for the purposes of money and labor laundering. This is the greatest criminal fraud created in the history of man, and it's being allowed to be perpetrated on you. That's how you know your government sold you out. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you if you didn't want that to happen. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you that whatever you think was your American government, whatever you think could be happening in next year's election, if it comes, if we live that long, just an illusion. It's just an illusion. The corporations are pulling the trigger. They're pulling the trigger on you now. They're not waiting to see which fucking 90% dead old man gets elected in some farcical dog shit system like the former United States of America. Our empire is dead. Our empire was sold out to organized crime and to corporations. Now, I want you to know I am far from the only person saying this. I came to these conclusions independently because I've been studying this for many years. I'm an economist. I have a master's in business administration from Duke University Fuqua School of Business in North Carolina, one of the finest business schools on the planet. I spent many years working at the highest levels of American corporations. I know exactly what's going on here. There's a reason I'm not in the corporations. It's that the corporations are just committing fraud. Not some of them, all of them. It's the game now. It's the game now because there are no consequences anymore. There is no government oversight. The corporations and their lawyers are now providing the rules or the lack thereof for the exploitation of humanity. So your only faith, if you put trust in the American government, you are putting trust in corporations. That's just insane because they're not human. If you put your trust in corporate AI, you're putting trust in corporations, and you're putting trust in anti-human software, anti-human technology. That's insane, purely and totally insane. If the human race survives, they're going to look back on this time and go, "Holy crap, those people are stupid. Holy crap, did those people get fooled?" Now, chances are at this point that we're not going to survive. That's the bad news. The good news is if we do, you're the hero. So you got to do something about it. You got to step up uh, and do this. So let's look at something I wrote last year. Complaining about politics whilst our humanity is destroyed by the DoorDash singularity is literal insanity. DoorDash, a self-defined, quote, technology company, end quote, is in the process of challenging UPS and FedEx and the United States Postal Service in local, quote, logistics, end quote, through the exploitation of millions of app slaves. That's what's happening. Have you noticed the decrease in your entire local community activity other than app slavery? And God knows how many app slaves there are right now, tens of millions, hundreds of millions around the world, maybe billions. But again, we have no way of knowing because the corporations are in charge of themselves. And when I say corporations, I'm not talking about human beings. When I say corporate AI, I'm not talking about human beings. I'm talking about computers to which you are nothing but data. You do not have a government that looks at you like a human being. If the police kill you, they're going to say qualified immunity, and that's okay because they're agents of the government. If you get killed in a war zone, if they bring the war to America, which is likely, it's hard to commit genocide and war all around the world and not have it come home to you. But when that does, they're going to say, "Well, you're a victim of war." When you starve to death, they're going to say, "Well, you didn't want to be an app slave. We gave you the opportunity to be an app slave, and you didn't want to do that, so we turned you off." There's no good outcome. There's absolutely no good outcome for anarcho-fascism in which corporations and organized crime are running the world. There's no good outcome. The only logical course of action is for all of the people of the world to rise up and kill corporations, not the people, but destroy corporations and destroy the, well, whatever functions as a government, and create new governments, create a new money supply that's not owned by corporations. See, the corporations stole your money supply. The corporations and the banks are the same. The corporation and the banks and the organized crime are the same. They print the money, they steal the money. You don't have the money. You can't get the money. It's a game of keep away. You can't get it. You don't have the right to a job. You don't have the right to their money supply. So they can just starve you out. That is, unless you renounce them and kill them. The greatest revolution ever. This is the greatest revolution in the history of the world, because you can kill corporations uh, with your head, with your heart, and with your technology. You can kill corporations with your head, heart, and technology. You can't kill people, oligarchs, police officers, military. You don't want to get in a war with people who have the exclusive right to perpetrate violence upon you, and who have the weapons of war and military. That's a lose for everybody. So you got it in 2024. It's time to fight with your brain. It's time to fight with your humanity. It's time to fight with being awake. Because if you're awake, you can't fall for this. No awake person could be an app slave. You can't, because every time you turn on that phone, you're submitting your consciousness to a corporation with no rules other than to exploit you. There is no way to fix gig apps. There's no way to fix app slavery. There's no way to fix the American government, because it's gone. Corporations and organized crime stole this thing. The only thing you can do is end the corporations and organized crime. A fire. This is by Kierkegaard. This is by Kierkegaard, who was a philosopher a long time ago. A fire broke out backstage in a theater. The clown came out to warn the public. They thought it was a joke and applauded. He repeated it. The acclaim was even greater. I think that's just how the world will come to an end, to general applause from wits who believe it's a joke. Well, there you go. Guess who the wits are that believe it's a joke? Yeah, us. No matter how clear the signs are, no matter, if your neighbor knocked on your door and said, "Hey, I'll give you $4 to go drive to a restaurant and pick up my dinner," you go, "Fuck you, you asshole, you son of a bitch! Don't ever knock on my door again." But if your gig app does it to you, you go like, "Well, I guess." These dog shit applications and their lack of reality fleece humanity into doing things that they would never do if they were awake. Never, ever, ever do if they were awake to reality, because nobody would work for a loss of money. Nobody would work for such horrible sub minimum wages that they're doing nothing for themselves. They're literally destroying their automobile, and the risk reward ratio that is inherent in business. Business is about risk reward. All the risk is on the driver, all the risk is on the app slave, and all the reward is on the corporation. Who would do that? You can't, you cannot sign off on being that victim. You cannot. Even if you want to, you can't. You can't be that stupid. You can't play the world champion chess computer and think you're going to win. You can't play corporate AI and think you're going to win. You can't. I'll be your clown. I'll say you can laugh the fuck at me as a crazy old man, but I'm fucking guarantee you I'm right. Absolutely 100% fucking put my life on it. I'm right. In fact, I don't even expect to live that long. That's how bad it is. That's how bad the organized crime and this situation is. I don't expect humanity to live this long, and I expect myself to live a shorter time. These are billionaires and trillionaires and corporations. Will they have those of us killed who resist? Probably. I've been expected to be killed for a long time. So, what are we going to do? Be a slave? Be a slave to corporations? Because that's what they're coming next. They're going to basically shut down the internet. They're going to be able to control. You're going to have an ID for everything you do. They're going to be able to control how long you work, whether you're allowed to drive or not. Your slave phone, if you allow them to do it, this here slave phone is going to be able to control your entire life. And they're going to try and mandate that everything that you do is going to be through this piece of technology. You'll never fucking get away from it. But see, this isn't your government that's trying to build a future for you. This is corporations that are trying to enslave you. We are occupied. We are occupied. Ukraine is occupied. Everywhere is occupied. Russia's occupied. We're occupied. China's occupied. Everybody's occupied. The people of the world are occupied by organized crime, artificial intelligence, and corporations. And now they got World War III here to knock a whole bunch of us off. I'm pretty sure Mark Zuckerberg don't plan in dying in World War III. Jeff Bezos doesn't plan on dying in World War III. Tony Hsieh and Dario Khosrowshahi and David Risher, they don't plan on dying in World War III. You might. You will. They won't. They plan to out survive you. They're not even, they're shameless about it. They'll just build their $200 million bunker on their $200 million piece of property right in front of you while they're robbing you. And we've made this celebrity culture where stupid kids dancing on TikTok are famous and make money, and college football players and coaches make money, and people are dying on the streets. This is bread and circus. Come on, people. Come on, people. We've been waiting for this. We've been waiting for this since World War II. Since the Nazis pulled their thing in World War II, they've been working on getting us right back into the genocide game. And here we are. Here we are. Time to clean house. Except we're the ones getting cleaned out. And it's a brilliant plan. It's a brilliant plan. Between corporations and corporate AI, there's plausible deniability for every human being to just skate free. You know, the Tony Hsiehs and Mark Zuckerbergs and David Rishers and all the criminals of the planet, all the organized criminals of the planet, they're going to hang out with the other organized criminals. You got the blood money from Elon Musk's family in South America. You got that fucking sister raping dipshit, allegedly Sam Altman, looking to kill the planet. Yeah, nobody won World War II. Nobody wins any war. See, that's the lie. That's the lie. Nobody wins at any war. The people always lose. The people always lose. I mean, America dropped the only two nuclear bombs were dropped on civilian populations. And, you know, people have been trying to excuse that for years, just like they excuse everything else that the military-industrial complex and corporations and fascists do. There's always a good fucking excuse. There's always a good fucking excuse to kill people, because it really fucking matters whether the Russian Empire or some independent government take the taxation from the people. All those dead people, their entire nation leveled. Yeah, sure, that was worth it. That was worth it for borders on Google, for illusions of government, for illusions of oligarchs. Well, we've got baby boomers, all these fucking 70 and 80-year-old men mostly attempting to end the world. They all know they're going to die, and they figure they'll just take us with them. Motherfuckers. So one of the things that I've been doing the last few days, I haven't broadcast a couple days. I've been studying a lot. And what am I studying a lot? I'm studying a lot on genocide and fascism, because I know that that's what we're going through, and that's what we will be going through. And I want to introduce you to somebody who is extremely, extremely smart, extremely accomplished. I'm a huge admirer of hers. Her name is Whitney Webb. She's a journalist, and an independent journalist at that, maybe the most independent journalist. She moved out of the United States. She lives down in Chile. And she's going to talk to you about all the stuff that I just told you, but she's going to tell you she's one of the foremost researchers. She wrote a 1,000-page book, 1,000-page multi-volume book on the Epstein scandal, and she's the world expert on that. So check this shit out. It's going to amaze you. It's going to scare the pants off you, but it's basically going to tell you everything I'm telling you, which is you don't have a government, you have organized criminals. So you got to rise up against the organized criminals. You got to rise up against the lie of the American government. You got to rise up against the corporations, the anarcho-fascism. And the best part of it is you don't have to go killing people in the streets. You don't have to get your head chopped off. You don't have to chop anybody else's heads off. Corporations aren't alive. You're allowed to kill them. Destroy corporations. Destroy police qualified immunity. Make new countries with new forms of mediums of exchange. Make new communities, make new economies. You got to start over. They poisoned the well here. They poisoned the well. This corporate AI can't be fixed. It can't be made to be pro-human. It's only anti-human, and the game's fucking over. You get it? The game's fucking over. This is where you lose for good. Let's watch Whitney Webb. Now, this is from a podcast called TFTC. I subscribe to it, but I don't know these fellers. Doesn't matter. They got Whitney Webb on it, and it's a great freaking interview. So I'm going to share this with you here, and I'm going to put the link up. And man, this shit's going to blow your mind. We could listen to multiple hours of Whitney Webb because this is a person who does her research. Everything that she says is backed up by research and real journalism, real facts, real evidence, the kind that I provide in my work as well. This is Whitney Webb, AI powered tyranny on TFTC.
Sup, freaks? This rip was brought to you by our good friends at River. River has a new referral program. Go to river.com/TFTC for $5 worth of Bitcoin. When you sign up, set up an account and buy $100, you're going to get $5 of Bitcoin on top of that. River is the most secure Bitcoin exchange since they don't rely on any third parties. They built everything in-house from their wallets to their Lightning Network wallets. They also have zero fee, dollar cost averaging. Other platforms charge large fees and have giant spreads. Go with River to avoid that if you set up.
Just a note from me on cryptocurrency. You guys know what's going down, right? BlackRock and the US government, they're creating a scenario where they're going to be taking over all of the independence of cryptocurrency, if you will. So this is just another one of these cataclysmic economic events. Cryptocurrency is mostly or completely a gambling scam, an AI run gambling scam. This is all just uh, a bunch of shenanigans. Even if it was intended to be real, it's built upon the financial system of U.S. hegemony, U.S. Control of the dollar and the world. And so it's built upon a financial scam. You can't build something on a scam and have it be legitimate. That's the problem with the gig economy, corporate cabal, and fraud. There's no way to reform what is at its very core a fraud. So I am not a believer in cryptocurrency or in what's happening. I believe, by the way, I also don't believe that privacy in any way, shape, or form exists. If you believed at one point that cryptocurrency would be private, or the blockchain would somehow
DCA. Again, you're not going to pay any fees on this.
isolate you from the government. Yeah, that's never happening. And in fact, as you will hear Whitney Webb say, she expects that very soon we will be required to log in with unique government IDs to even use the internet, and everything we do and say, all of our data, all of YouTube, everything will be automated. They're also predicting that AI generated content will take over YouTube. So they're predicting that the Nugs and Pedro scams and the rideshare guy, all the dog shit propaganda for the global gig economy fraud will be replaced by artificial intelligence content too. And they're not going to need or want human drivers in cars. They want brown kids on bikes. They want people on scooters. They want people on foot. The last mile delivery is a scam. It's not a viable business proposition. Nobody's ever going to have a viable business proposition in you going up and picking up food and driving it out to somebody's house and then driving back home for $9. That's never going to be a viable business proposition. It never was. These are loss leaders for them to monopolize the market, to monopolize the world on app slavery and create a global labor laundering and money laundering system. So don't do it. Don't do it. You got to get off it. You got to get all of it. You got to destroy it. You got to kill it. Kill those corporations, not the people, the corporations.
Been a
Yeah,
long
it's
rolling
great to be
summer for
here.
you.
Sorry. Well, it was winter for me because I live in Chile, right? So I guess, I didn't have to worry about making a wood fire every day. I guess that was probably like the only benefit of not being in my house for 3 months. But yeah, great to be back. It feels nice to be doing an interview again after a long, not really necessarily sought out hiatus.
Yeah. And you're ending that hiatus with World War III fuckery starting. It's pretty insane out there.
Yeah, I mean, so much stuff has happened over the past 3 months. It's like been pretty mind-boggling to watch, and also kind of desensitizing because, as we've talked about before, Clown World has not gone away and has only gotten like more clownish, and there's no exit ramps, and it's just like instead we're all descending deeper into the madness. I don't know. Headlines are always crazy, and it's obviously not getting any less crazy. It's just getting crazier. So I have a feeling that trend will continue a lot, actually. I think next year is going to be fucking wild. 2024, also an election year. And, a lot of weird stuff has been predicted for next year, like economic calamity, the cyber 9/11, stuff like that. So we'll see what happens. But I definitely think next year is going to be really spicy.
Yeah, I mean, the stage is certainly being set. We have shit popping off in Israel and Palestine. I've intentionally tried to stay away from it because the fog of war is never a good time, like as it's going on, to be making rash takes, hot takes, and it's just been insane to see the vitriol. I mean, if you're looking for something to divide people, something popping off between Israel and Palestine is definitely that.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, so I've been reporting on Israel and Palestine like for a really long time. A lot of my early journalistic career was pretty much like in that space, almost not exclusively, but predominantly. The US population in particular is like primed to have that be probably one of the most polarizing issues, period. And it's very much along the existing like left-right divide, but not necessarily, but it's a lot of it is also like baked into the religious landscape of the United States, through Christian Zionism and a lot of other stuff. And I don't know. I've done a lot on the history of Zionism and a lot about some of the messianic movements, both like in Israel and in the U.S. that see a lot of what's happening now, oddly enough, as necessary for the fulfillment of end times prophecy. And some of those groups have like a very direct and openly stated posture that they should do absolutely everything that they possibly can to hasten the coming of the end times. So that's definitely, I guess maybe some people view that as conspiratorial thinking and looking at this current conflict. But I mean, if you think about it and you have these like world leaders, both in Israel and the US and elsewhere, thinking that certain things need to happen for religious motivations that they care deeply about, those are probably going to shape geopolitical events, specifically in this area, to a very significant degree. And it's been going on for many years, if not really centuries. And I don't know. I mean, I can get more in the weeds about that if you want, because I think honestly, one of the big issues as it comes to people understanding this particular conflict is that not a lot of people have really dug that deeply into the history of Zionism at all. And like a lot of people I talked to in the States, like when I lived there, didn't even realize that Israel's creation as a state happened as recently as 1948. Like there's people that think it's always been there and don't really get the conflict at all, you know? So I think, that really makes it easy to, for certain quote unquote influencers in different spaces to shape narratives that aren't necessarily accurate. But, if you dig deeper into the history of Zionism and also into some of these more like messianic focused movements that are very intertwined with the political landscape of both the US and Israel, that's probably like the best way to predict how this is going to play out over the next couple months and years. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. With the biblical tilt, you have the Christians like Mike Pence here in the US who want that temple to be brought down and then rebuilt, which will symbolize...
Oh, it's not just Pence though. It's the Christian Zionists are very big on the destruction of the Dome of the Rock or the Al-Aqsa Mosque for the purpose of the rebuilding of the Third Temple, which is also huge with a lot of, segments of Israeli society that are in power right now with the current Netanyahu-led coalition. Some of these more like extremist settler groups. Very into the destruction of that existing structure. And this is all about like end time stuff, but it's also not just them. Like if you're a subscriber to the influence of secret societies, for example, Freemasons, totally obsessed with the Third Temple also. So there's like all these different groups of varying influence that are very interested in seeing something happen there and see it as a prerequisite to their differing, but overlapping, end time theories coming to fruition. So for people that don't know, Al-Aqsa Mosque is, I believe, I think it's the third holiest site in Islam. So if anything happens to that building, you're going to have the entire Muslim world coming after the people who were responsible. Yeah. And some of the current people in Israel's government or factions that are now quite heavily represented in their legislature and in the current administration were people that like back in the 1980s were trying to tunnel under the Dome of the Rock to blow it up and were considered, very fringe extremists at that time, but now they're not. Like now they're in power. And there's a very, there's a lot of risk there for sure of having something happen to that building. And it'll probably be, I don't really look forward to that happening, but it seems almost inevitable just because so many people think it has to happen for their different, eschatological, beliefs to come out. And I don't know. I mean, it's just so crazy to talk about because this is like such a level of, reality that a lot of people don't think about. That like, people think, oh, this is confirmation of, what I was taught as a kid in church or whatever. Like, I think that's how they want people to feel because these people have also very openly stated they're intentionally doing it because they don't want to wait for God to do it. They have to do it. Like, that's the theological justification, both on the Christian and Jewish side to make this happen. I mean, all very... very nuts. So it's basically like a self-fulfilling prophecy in a sense, but it's going to lead to a lot of death and destruction and complete madness. And, the deeper you go into like this whole like messianic stuff, like the Jewish Messiah and the Mashiach and all that stuff, and what that's supposed to mean in both the Christian and Jewish sense, and this idea of like, New World Order sort of springing from that. It gets pretty nuts. when you consider the possibilities of where this could go, if these people in the driver's seat trying to, have a particular vision they're trying to fulfill, how successful will they be in fulfilling that vision? I don't know. It's worth doing some research into what they believe and what they think needs to happen. So one of the things, they think needs to happen is the complete expulsion of all Palestinians from the state of Israel, from the occupied territories in Gaza, and also, Israel itself, where there's Palestinian citizens that are Israeli citizens, but they're Palestinian. So basically the idea that they all need to be ethnically cleansed, essentially, from the area. And this is really prominent in Christian Zionism. And, like you mentioned, Mike Pence, there's a lot of other really powerful people that subscribe to that. And it's very prominent, particularly in the Republican Party. But I mean, one of the main organizations directing a lot of this within the United States is called CUFI, Christians United for Israel. And Netanyahu has described CUFI as essential to Israel's national security. And there's a lot of overlap between the two. So definitely worth exploring that stuff. And I actually did a really in-depth piece about all of this stuff that's well-sourced, and probably one of the best articles I've written on the subject, called The Untold History of Christian Zionism. You can find it on Mint Press News, where I used to write. It was part of a longer series, but I stopped because the Epstein thing happened, and my whole career kind of changed after that. But managed to get this out before all that happened. Definitely worth taking the time to look at it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because this is going to be a really crazy series of events in the Middle East, for sure.
It's very scary. The vitriol is at an all-time high. You have both sides calling for genocide in that part of the world, and it's baffling. I've seen you've been tweeting about it, and I've just been observing. Again, I've been trying to be very intentional, not have any hot takes on the subject, because if I'm being completely honest, again, fog of war, things are going on in real time, and I honestly don't know what's happening, what intentions are, or what any ulterior motives may be. But the one observation I have made is that it's just stunning that everybody's been riled up so successfully, and this is coming off the heels of the COVID lockdowns, the vaccine mandates, the war in Ukraine. And it's like, if you're a puppet master, if you were to envision a puppet master, it's like you get the COVID lockdowns to get everybody scared. You get the war in Ukraine. You get everybody on the left supporting that. And then you get this war where you get the neocons supporting what's going on in Israel and Palestine right now.
Of course.
And everybody gets what they want.
Well, the whole thing about neoconservatives, from their origins, from a political standpoint, have consistently been about basically unifying American foreign policy and Israeli foreign policy, tooling U.S. foreign policy to benefit Israeli foreign policy. So hence the war in Iraq and a lot of other stuff. And this goes back to policy documents written by very important figures in that movement, like Richard Pearl, his A Clean Break, the removal of Saddam Hussein. And even people like Hillary Clinton, who people don't think of as necessarily a neoconservative, but sort of very much fulfilling of that pro-war line, also in leaked emails talked about fomenting the quote unquote Syrian revolution and all of the, the proxy war stuff that happened there as a way to benefit Israel explicitly and stuff like that. And it's, there's differing opinions, of course, as to why that is, of whether it's due to undue influence of Israel over the United States, or the U.S. seeing Israel as a useful tool to keep the Middle East perpetually unstable. And of course, Britain also being in that mix, seeing that as favorable as well. But again, this is all really complicated stuff. And I think what you mentioned earlier about this coming on the heels of COVID and people being really riled up. So every time people get really riled up over something, the people that are trying to hurt us into insane digital enslavement land use that to their benefit, right? And it essentially becomes another opportunity to deploy divide and conquer tactics, of course, for their benefit and not for ours. So there was a take that I thought was kind of interesting, and obviously I'm going to paraphrase here, and I think it was Gareth Ike that said it, but something like, in any situation well, not necessarily any situation, but I guess this situation, people are really being pushed to pick a side. Are you with Hamas or are you with the IDF? But what we should really do is pick the side of all the, the innocent civilians who aren't part of these freaking banker wars. And we should just step off the chessboard and stop playing their game. And I think that's, a pretty good take, honestly, because, obviously, I mean, I haven't been following what's happened here super closely, but as far as I understand it, the first bloodshed was this rave in southern Israel. And apparently that was for the purpose of, promoting like peace with the Palestinians. So like a lot of the people that were killed there were Israelis that, for example, had chosen not to serve in the IDF and things like that. People that Palestinians, I think, would normally see as allies within Israel. But then you have people's, sort of glorifying that on one side. And then, of course, on the other side, Gaza, half of the population of Gaza are children, under the age of 18. And so promoting the carpet bombing of that, the refusal to let humanitarian aid in, bombing people who are evacuating per IDF instructions and all of this stuff. I mean, there's no celebrating that. And there's this whole return of this mentality of you're either with us or you're with the terrorist stuff, just like, the post 9/11 mentality, which is the same mentality a lot of these same people were criticizing from the left during the COVID era. It's come back, and I think unfortunately shows that a lot of people are still very much caught in that trap and pretty easily manipulated, by the powers that be. And it's not, again, benefiting any of the regular people here, whether it's in Israel, Palestine, or somewhere else. There's just a lot of innocent people that don't want any of this. And I would also encourage people to keep in mind that Israel and also, Hamas and the Gaza Strip, like, forced the COVID vaccine on the populations that they rule over. So, that's also something to keep in mind. And there's a lot of documentation that's come out, over the years preceding this current conflict of how Israel wanted Hamas to be in control of the Gaza Strip, because they could treat it as a hostile entity and not have to, deal with the peace process, which, if you're familiar with a lot of, at least the national level is really, how politics works there. There's been a consistent effort to sabotage any sort of two-state solution for a really long time. And of course, the fact that those forces in Israel would want Hamas to be in power in the Gaza Strip suggests that Hamas is not the group that is going to act in the best interests of Palestinians or Palestinian sovereignty, right? So, I don't know. Those are just some things I'd like to say, I guess, about the conflict. But again, the loss of human life is always going to be lamentable there. But I have a feeling that the pot is only going to continually be stirred because, a lot of these same groups that, I brought up earlier that have this whole messianic flavor to everything they do think that there needs to be a big war between Israel and Iran for the end times, and that the Dome of the Rock's got to get blown up and all the Palestinians have to be removed from Israel and all these different things have to happen. And you have people with major influence over major governments in this whole conflict, whether directly involved right now or in the periphery or soon to be involved, who feel that way. Crazy.
Yeah. No, it's completely insane. It's extremely disheartening, again, to see the vitriol and just the animalistic reaction to this, where it's like us versus them. And like you mentioned, half the population of Gaza, 1.1 million of the 2.2, are under the age of 18. And a lot of people have been like, oh, they're all pro-Hamas, they voted them in, but it's like half the population is not a voting age, so that doesn't really make sense. Then you have the whole like attack on this rave and then getting through the borders, which was really perplexing considering how tightly secured those borders have been historically.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
And the comparisons from Israel's government saying that this was Israel's 9/11. And very odd when you like are aware of the extensiveness of Israel's, surveillance capabilities domestically as well as internationally. I mean, it's just absurd that they wouldn't have been able to know that was going to happen in advance. And there's people that are like, IDF veterans and Israelis that definitely are no friends of, Palestine or Hamas that are saying that's the case. And, if you're familiar with the realities of 9/11, there's only really a few possibilities there. Either it was intentionally done by, intelligence agencies, or it was allowed to happen by intelligence agencies. So I think we can assume that, similar possibilities may have happened here with Israel because, before all of this happened, Netanyahu was facing like major issues domestically, a huge amount of protests against him, major efforts to remove him from power. He's been trying to stay in power because the justice system, this particular attorney, has been going after him for corruption for some time. And so he teamed up with sort of these far, sort of like extremist groups, I guess, that we touched on earlier as sort of a way, like, I'll help you guys get into power if you help me pass this judicial reform legislation that will, if it does pass, essentially allow Netanyahu to get off the hook for the charges he's facing. And so that conveniently all goes away, and now there's a new unity government that's justified by the war. And oddly, well, not oddly, but tellingly, polls from within Israel, most Israelis for everything going on right now blame Netanyahu and want him to resign.
Yeah,
so
it's very convenient. And again, it's the hearkening to 9/11 is mind-blowing. Like, on just pattern recognition, I was 10, 11 when 9/11 happened and witnessed everything that happened. As a fourth grader, got pulled into the war drum beating. Like, they riled us up at our elementary school. Like, we got to go to war. We got to go to war. And it was on my computer because I wanted to pull up this tweet. Here's the original tweet. Nobody said on 9/11, America must retaliate proportionally. Both sides need to show restraint. Where's the proof of all the dead bodies? You are oversimplifying. There's context about the conflict you're ignoring. Let's try to de-escalate the situation. And so this is somebody from the Israel side saying, like, no, like, we didn't question this during 9/11. Like, we shouldn't have to question it now. Then Tom Woods, quote tweet that said, if only we had spoken and thought like this instead of pointlessly blowing trillions of dollars and killing at least 4.5 million people. According to the Washington Post, what we laughingly call the conservative movement is a disgrace. So it's just like, it feels like what happened after 9/11 is happening again. And knowing the aftermath of 9/11 and how fucked up it was, we lied to get into the wars. Weapons of mass destruction didn't exist. Like, nobody ever questions the Saudi involvement, like, who was actually driving the planes, flying the planes, and the Patriot Act that came after it and led to the dystopian hellscape that we're currently living in. And it's just mind-boggling that people can't see the pattern recognition. Like, it's the same playbook over again in my mind. Obviously, fog of war, things are happening, people are dying by the hundreds day in and day out, and people are really riled up and unable to see clearly what's going on. But sitting at my desk here in Austin, Texas, and observing this from afar, it seems pretty obvious that the playbook is being run back.
Yeah, and what's actually pretty disturbing to me? I've talked about this with a couple people that I've worked with in the past, like Robbie Martin and Jeremy Lafredo. I've had some concerns for a while that some of the people that became prominent as sort of dissidents in the COVID-19 era became very cozy or were directly tied to the neoconservatives who came to prominence during the Bush era. And were sort of, in my opinion, trying to bring a lot of, so think about the MAGA base, right? And how sort of Trump became popular. Well, Trump, when he was campaigning in 2015, was very much like took an anti-neocon posture, right? Mm-hmm. And not necessarily anti-war. but definitely, less. Iraq was a mistake, for example, in saying things of that nature, and that was very popular. And really, among the Republican voting base, there was a mass rejection of neocon foreign policy, and that seems to have changed, isn't it? And it seems like there's been a lot of figures that have sort of regained the trust of that particular base during the COVID era, and are now currently saying we need to go to war and bomb the crap out of Gaza and maybe Iran and maybe Lebanon.
The whole Iran
So
thing,
something to think about.
like the Lindsey Grahams of the world and Nikki Haley's coming out and being like, we need to go attack Iran. It's like, whoa, like
I don't know how people still vote for Lindsey Graham. That guy is insane. He goes on TV and says the most insane war I don't know. I don't know how people believe that and look at that guy and are like, that's who I want to vote for, unless they work for contractors or they just have mush brain. I just don't get it.
no. Yeah, he's 70 years old, no children, just wants to bomb the crap out of the world, then die and just leave us with the mess.
Yeah, man. Yeah, yikes. Yeah, but anyway, there's some websites. So some of these neocon guys like Frank Gaffney, people that were tied up with PNAC, if you're familiar, Project for a New American Century, and its I guess follow-up organization, the Foreign Policy Initiative. A lot of those people got involved with the Stop Vaccine Passport stuff, and even made a website. I think it was called stopvaccinepassports.com or something, and got very involved with those efforts with COVID. And there's a lot of a lot of them ended up popping up, like Frank Gaffney in particular, on Steve Bannon's pandemic war room stuff, right? And sort of rehabilitating some neocon foreign policy, but being like, oh, we're against globalism and digital IDs and the vaccine passport, saying all this stuff brings that base back. And then when the time is right and the trust is there, they're like, and war with Iran, which is exactly where the Bush era neocons were going, after Iraq anyway.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know.
before he died.
Just seems overly convenient to me.
Yeah.
So again, this is why I like to tell people, don't have political saviors, and please think for yourself. Because if you just, outsource your brain, okay, you're not outsourcing your brain to MSM anymore, but you're outsourcing your brain to Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson and, Steve Bannon and people like that. You're not necessarily going to get led in a better direction than MSM would eventually lead you.
Yeah, you got to think for yourself.
Not at this point.
And you have to slay your heroes if they start leading you astray. And it's very obvious that it's happening right now. And again, going back to the convenience of the timing of it all, whether it's the sort of political morass that Netanyahu found himself in a few months ago, or here in the U.S., we have a financial crisis that's on the verge of popping off. I'm not sure if you've been paying attention to what's going on there, but it's pretty obvious.
Yeah,
that something
sure.
is structurally
but war
broken.
helps, right?
Yeah, yes, exactly. So it's all very convenient. Just similar to COVID. In 2019, the fall of 2019, it was becoming glaringly obvious that the financial system was systemically fragile, and it's becoming glaringly obvious that we're back at that point again in the fall of 2023. And like you said, war helps.
Well, war traditionally lets the Fed print lots and lots of money because it's war. We got to do it. We got to win the war, right? So I think we can guess what'll happen there. Yeah. Unfortunately, not going to get much better. But I do want to sort of circle back bring up, I guess, some research I've done in the past, and was sort of the subject of what I talked about at the Bitcoin conference in May. So there's this particular group. It's a public-private partnership. It's housed within the World Economic Forum, the WEF. But the main I guess groups that compose this partnership are the FBI and the DOJ and the Secret Service, Israel's one of their security agencies, and the UK National Crime Agency, and then a bunch of banks, right? And then a few tech companies here and there. I think Palantir, maybe it's PayPal, Microsoft. I mean, some of these big guys are there. And basically, they're led by a former Israeli spy named Tal Goldstein that used to develop a lot of really crazy policies for Netanyahu. And Jeremy Jurgens, who I guess is number 2 at the WEF after Klaus Schwab, at the big WEF meeting earlier this year, was like, yep, big giant cyber attack before 2025. And, you know, the part of the WEF-PAC, the Partnership Against Cybercrime, that's the DOJ and all of these guys, say that it's going to be a cyber attack on the banks. Isn't that convenient that like the banks can just be like, oh, well, we've collapsed, but it wasn't our fault. It was the fault of these nasty hackers. And I'm sure the hackers will be Hamas and Iran. You know, they can blame anyone. Because as we know from Vault 7 and WikiLeaks, right, the CIA has the ability to frame literally any government it wants or any group it wants for a cyber attack. And the CIA lost control of those tools, hence WikiLeaks obtaining them and publishing them. And, you know, anyone can do it. Anyone can blame anyone. So it's very difficult to attribute. And even if you look at headlines about cyber attacks that have happened over the past several years, it's usually a cybersecurity company that, if you look on its website, was created by In-Q-Tel, the CIA, or it was created by Israel's Unit 8200, which is Israel's like NSA equivalent. And they're saying stuff like high probability that it might have been these guys. And our proof is that we don't have any proof, but it looks like something they might have done before. We think they did before. I mean, it's just like there's no evidence for anything, but out of, you know, that gobbledygook, you get a headline that says Chinese hackers responsible, you know, or, you know, Iranian hackers responsible. And that's all people see and read, right?
Yeah. And it's very easy to see that we could be in chapter 1 of the systemic bank failure, where it starts with this conflict in the Middle East. It keeps rising, and then there's an excuse to begin cyber attacking perceived enemies, and that's how the banks get attacked.
So there's this whole group of the big banks that's very secretive, and it's affiliated with WEF-PAC, and they have been gaming this out since like 2021 or so. It's a FS-ISAC, the Financial Services Information Sharing and Analysis Center.
Yeah,
and they collaborated with the European Central Bank, the Fed, the Carnegie Endowment, that at the time was run by the current CIA director, William Burns, talking about exactly how this was going to play out, the cyber attack on the banks.
Yeah, and I know I sent you this information probably a couple months at this point. But in parallel to all this going on, the Bank of International Settlements has been running CBDC trials with partner central banks around the world. So maybe they're doing that in parallel. The cyber attacks happen, and it's like, oh, thank God we've been running this.
But I think they're going to do it a couple different ways to try and keep populations from rebelling against it in certain countries where there's a growing awareness about CBDCs. So I think it's pretty clear that direct issue CBDCs, like as the BIS has laid out, are going to or have already happened in basically BRICS countries. So Brazil, Russia, China, it's all pretty much set up to play out that way, just as the BIS has foretold. But I think in some of these countries where the population is more wary of CBDCs or obvious centralized control of CBDCs, they're going to try and keep the two-tier system, you know, as it exists like right now in the US, and basically have the CBDC exist, but the public doesn't necessarily interact with it, which is, you know, essentially what FedNow is going to be, right? It's about settlements like between banks, and they'll use the CBDC, and then the public will interact instead with deposit tokens. And that'll be issued by the commercial banks, and that's what the public will interact with. And they're not called CBDCs, but they're programmable money, and they're going to run on the rails of FedNow. And it's really not that different of a system, but they and, oh, I have my JP Morgan deposit tokens, and I have my Citibank deposit tokens, and I have my Wells Fargo deposit tokens, and it's not a CBDC, right?
It's an abstracted white label CBDC, if you will.
Yeah, well, if you look at the big banks in the US, they're all in on deposit tokens and tokenized assets. JP Morgan, all in. And they're, the banks who are the banks that run the Fed, right? So, I mean, the most powerful Fed bank is the one in New York, right? And the main, shareholders of that bank, it's Citi and JP Morgan. And the head of JP Morgan, of course, is Jamie Dimon. And the person who essentially created Citibank, Jamie Dimon. So it's basically the same crowd that decides what goes on there. And I mean, if you've been looking at what Jamie Dimon has been saying recently, about stuff like we should seize private property for the purpose of combating climate change. You want these banks to be able to issue you programmable money. Like, it doesn't have to be a CBDC issued by the Fed to like have the same consequences. You know what I mean?
No, I mean, you could argue the way the financial system set up now, like it practically already exists. Like, they can just unperson anybody.
Yeah.
And
totally.
For any reason.
They have.
Yeah.
It happened to Merkele and his banks. They got deplatformed from Chase without any warning.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we had Russell Brand, didn't get debanked, but got kicked off of YouTube. We had Nigel Farage in the UK, had his bank accounts ripped out from under him. It's totally possible right now. It's just not as popular. I guess a CBDC system would make it easier, but I think it's totally possible today. It's just not politically palatable for most people.
Right. Well, I mean, I think in the US, again, they're going to try and set it up a different way than they're like running it in China and Russia and some of these BRICS countries, which are much more, the multipolar world order, that crowd or whatever, or a lot of them seem to be favoring the direct issue CBDC. But, you've already had some statements from the Fed about like a wariness toward a CBDC that some people have sort of taken as proof for some mystical, like, trust the Fed QAnon equivalent thing that Jerome Powell and Jamie Dimon are like actually our friends. And like, no, I think that just means that they know that a lot of people in the US would resist a CBDC direct issued, a push for that system. And so they're going to create essentially the same system in a way that seems a little more palatable, or at least not as obvious, or at least more analogous to the current system. Right.
Yeah. There's a theory out there. It's being popularized by Tom Luongo, who I've had on this show, but he's convinced that the Fed, via their interest rate policy and being directed by the big banks here in the U.S., is essentially attacking the Davos class by trying to collapse the European banking system, by draining the Eurodollar system with this high interest rate regime.
Yeah, I'm familiar, and he apparently doesn't like what I have to say about this, I've been told. But rule number one for me is never trust the bankers and never trust the Fed, and I'm going to stick by that.
That's a good rule.
Because it's worked really well for me so far. So, I don't think Jamie Dimon and Jerome Powell play 3D and 5D chess. I don't. I think, essentially the world as it is now, I think it's a lot more run by transnational capital than a lot of people would like to think, and I think that's why you end up seeing commonalities, for example, with COVID. Why did the US go all in for a lot of the same COVID policies and draconian, lockdowns and restrictions of civil liberties that happened in Russia and China and the entire world? Obviously, there's a lot more that the elite agree on than they disagree on when it comes to, keeping their respective populations under the boot, right?
Yeah.
And why do they all seem to get together at these globalist groups like Davos and what have you,
Jackson Hole, Bilderberg. But yeah, no, it seems like if the end goal is to confuse and instill fear in the global population to cattle herd them into this system. Like it's happening in real time. So you can believe that the Fed and the commercial banks here in the U.S. are attacking Europe and use that as like a diversion tactic to be like, no, they're on our side, and just get everybody placated and sort of believing that that's the truth. And then at the end of the day, they are all just like, haha, we played you.
Trust the plan is now trust the Fed. I'm not a believer. Sorry. Yeah, but I do want to point out that, we are really in unprecedented times, and there's obviously going to be a lot of big shifts, and they're probably going to happen in the next 1 to 2 years. So that cyber attack we were talking about earlier, once that happens, they're going to push for, and they've already mapped it out, the end of both online and financial anonymity. So if you're, talking about CBDCs or any sort of CBDC equivalent system, essentially, KYC, right? That's all going to be forced on everybody for everything. And anything that doesn't have that or affords any sort of financial privacy or anonymity will be made illegal under national security justifications. So we can expect a Cyber Patriot Act to come after this event. Yeah, that's going to have that stuff in it because they've already mapped out the policy. And then, of course, the end of online anonymity means tying a government issued ID to your internet access, and having internet access, require that at the ISP level. And that's what they've mapped out to do.
It's extremely terrifying.
The internet as you know it now will not exist after this happens, right? And you'll, what they'll say is, oh, you want to be allowed to be back online, you have to get this ID, which of course is going to be some sort of digital ID equivalent, since they're pushing for all of this with the CBDCs at the same time, right? But the goal is no anonymity period, and to have everything you do surveilled and compiled, and have AI oversee it all and do all this predictive policing, pre-crime stuff based on what you've already done and what you will do. So essentially the most important thing to do is not to participate in the system after that event. Just don't do it. So I would say if you want some of the stuff that's like on the internet now in terms of like knowledge, back that up offline, download it, put it on hard drives, Faraday bag it, keep it, safe. Because if you might want that stuff after all this happens and you don't want to have to, get the cattle tag to be able to be online, you definitely think ahead, because if you want to believe what the WEF says about this timeline on this stuff, which is I would take them seriously, you've got like a year, give or take a few months before the internet gets, nuked, basically.
Completely cucked. Now that you mentioned that, like the timeline of everything, like going all the way back to COVID, Ukraine, Russia, and then this time last year, you had the emergence of what many people would describe as the first consumer-ready AI applications. Then you have this pop off in the Middle East, the banking crisis happening in parallel. Like everything is just lining up almost too perfectly.
Yeah, there's a lot lining up. And it's not good. But the good thing is that, the more you look at the stuff, the more you can think about solutions, right? So definitely want to talk about that in a second. I'm going to drink some water really quick so I don't cough everywhere. Sorry. Been kind of sick for a week or two. Yeah, so a lot of crazy stuff going on right now is happening thanks to, or at least it's being enabled by in a huge way by big tech. So I'll give some examples before we talk about like AI in general, because I'm writing a piece on that I think is pretty important. But Microsoft, over the last 3 months, I forget exactly when, because I've sort of been in an offline bubble a lot of the time with my son, but they essentially came out and said like, all right, you use a Microsoft, Windows machine, your data is not your data anymore. And we're going to take your data whenever we want off the machine and train our AI on it, and you can't opt out. And if we decide to, we can just delete your data or block you from accessing your device by blocking your Microsoft ID or whatever. So if you're using a Windows machine, your data is not your data. And if you're serious about fighting this stuff, you have no excuse to not invest in some sort of freedom tech stuff. So I definitely think people, particularly like in the Bitcoin space, need to put a lot more attention considering what we're facing on freedom tech and supporting developers that are developing that tech.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you're
sure.
aware of the project, but Start OS is basically a Linux-based system that's trying to create a new operating system external to Microsoft and Apple that people can use and use open source software products to run their lives. Use something like Nextcloud instead of Dropbox, and have Jitsi instead of Zoom.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think, I think even Jitsi like got rid of their anonymity function recently too. Like a lot of these are under attack. Yeah. So I think, there's a huge need to divest from big tech as much as possible, and it needs to happen quickly, because unless the choice is either participate in the system being designed for you by the crazy people and become a slave, or don't become a slave, right? So if you don't want to be a slave, you have to invest now in making in big tech alternatives, unless you want to live a completely analog life, right?
Yeah.
And so if you don't think it's practical for you to live an analog life, you got to find something that works that isn't these guys.
Yeah, and it's not easy. It's hard, like running Start OS, getting a private public key pair set up on Nostr and interacting with those different clients is definitely harder. It's more rough around the edges, but it's getting better. And if you shift the development talent, particularly to focus on these areas, I think you can reach parity with big tech in terms of being able to do on your computer and interact on social networks
totally.
You do in the incumbent system.
Well, here's the thing. People are lazy and like don't want to have to learn how to do something new or something that like maybe has 2 steps more than what they used before. I mean, people have to get over that. It's not going to be the easiest route is to go the slavery route, and that's how they've designed it on purpose. The whole selling point of that system is that it's convenient and easy. So obviously it's going to take some work to go the other route, but yeah, I mean, the future of human freedom depends on it. So I think it's a pretty easy choice. And if you have to do some, tutorials or whatever, why the internet is still like sort of functioning the way it should function to an extent in terms of like democratizing access to information, like let's please do that and not be like, oh man, I wish I did that now that they've screwed the whole internet over and I have to get a digital ID if I want to be online anymore.
Yeah.
Like now is the time. Now is the time. And not enough people are talking about it or are focused on solutions. And I think, that's one of the major problems in independent media right now, just in general, is that it's all about clicks and who's going to watch my stuff and talking about stuff that's going to keep my audience like sucked in, I guess, and not necessarily so much about like how do we get out of this. And if you want to think that this timeline, or if it seems to you like it does to me that the timeline for action is getting increasingly small, we got to start doing stuff, and we got to start talking about how to do that stuff. And if you don't have like the developing, the programming know-how or whatever, there are people that do, right? And you can support them or you can learn.
Yeah.
And divest somehow. I mean, for people that don't want to do that too, there's options like Ramiro Romani runs a Above phone, and they make de-Googled smartphones ready to go. Super easy. You can buy it from his website. They're making laptops now for people that don't want to have to invest the time and like putting Graphene OS on a phone themselves, or learning all this learning a Linux necessarily. Like they make it really easy, and there's never been a better time to do that than now, because if you see where Microsoft's going, you're not going to be able to keep access to your own data unless you avoid committing thought crime. For Microsoft. I mean, that's just nuts.
No, and to continue mapping this out for people, like going back to Start OS It's created by a company called Start9 Labs, and they're essentially creating an operating system that will allow you to self-host all of your stuff. So you'll have a server at your house. They partner with Purism to get their operating system out of the box. You can buy one of the Purism laptops if you want to. You can buy a Purism server, plug it in, and then it's plug and play. You get the de-Google, de-Apple, de-Microsoft software suite, and then you can host all of your data on your own machine, your pictures, your files. You don't have to send it to the cloud and feed the AI superstructure that's trying to take your life over.
Man, and the AI stuff is legit insane. So Catherine Austin Fitts, who runs the Solari Report, and is awesome in general, and has done a lot of great interviews about CBDCs and the BIS and all of that, asked me to write a piece for their new issue on artificial intelligence. And so I decided to write about something I've wanted to do for a while, though it's kind of torturous, which is to read the book on AI written by Henry Kissinger and former Google CEO Eric Schmidt. And, you know, I wasn't really surprised for what I found. It's fucking nuts. And so my piece for them is titled The Final Coup, because I think that's really what it is. So, you know, Henry Kissinger, what has his whole career been, really? So he ran the State Department, and he was like, you know, an operator for groups like the Trilateral Commission and a lot of these other entities that want like global technocracy as sort of designed by groups like the Rockefellers, you know, for quite a long time. And at the State Department, you know, sort of turned using the State Department into an engine for coup d'etats, you know, into an art form. And then, of course, he leaves the State Department, but essentially trains up most of the other subsequent secretaries of state, including people like Hillary Clinton, for example, among others, of course, who would then go on and do regime change. So, you know, he's a coup guy, you know, and definitely very into realpolitik and all of these things, and a war criminal, and obviously doesn't care about the little people. I think one of his more infamous quotes is about, you know, calling U.S. soldiers like dumb beasts that are like pawns for the people that actually, you know, decide what happens in the world. So definitely an elitist worldview. And you also find that in this book, and it's crazy. So, I mean, it basically... there's all these different parts to it, I guess, but essentially their argument is something like AI is going to be so much smarter than us that it's going to be able to see aspects of reality that we can't see, but we should definitely trust that whatever it tells us is in this invisible hidden reality is totally reality and not just some AI hallucination, which is like an actual term, like that's a real phenomenon where AI presents something totally false and provably false as fact, right? So it can very easily be, you know, whatever this quote unquote reality is that AI is identifying is delusional or just made up. It only exists in the mind, quote unquote, of the AI, right? So anyway, they don't bring that up in their book at all. They just say AI is going to allow us to pursue this awesome quest for super knowledge, and we're going to be able to see unseen realities. But there's a trade-off, they say. And the trade-off is that in order to unlock AI's full potential, we have to essentially sell off our ability to perceive reality, and we have to use AI as we're using, you know, as not just as we're using it now, but deepen that involvement to the point where we're essentially dependent on AI to make decisions for us, and we become cognitively diminished by AI, meaning that you know, we aren't using our brains like we did before to make decisions and reason and perceive reality, and so AI, the machine, is doing all of that for us. That's sort of what they envision. And that's very dystopian. But then you read on and they start essentially talking about this two-tier society model. So basically they're like, well, this AI quote unquote revolution will be very empowering for some people. the policymakers, the heads of multinational corporations, the people who design AI and code it and task it and regulate it. They'll find this very empowering. But then the people who, consume AI from, the consumer level, or just sort of, not part of that other tier, everyone else really, will be bewildered by its opaque decision making, and will be disempowered or find it disconcerting and won't really have any control over their lives anymore, and then over time will cease to be able to realize what's happening to them. And that's literally what the book is about. It's very nuts, and talks about, AI is basically going to draw people, mainly this disempowered class, into a new version of reality that is essentially being designed by the empowered class, right? The technocrats, I guess you could call them. It's very like Matrix-esque, and very creepy. And a lot of it also has to do with what they say is going to be AI control over the information space. And of course, that's going to really come into its own once both AI and the internet are heavily regulated by a centralized authority, which is what the UN is gearing up to do next year. What do you know?
What are they gearing up to, like, set the rules for? All right, here's how you interact with it? Because
yes, for AI for everyone globally, a new UN agency, and it's backed by all the big AI companies like Sam Altman's OpenAI, among others.
It's completely disgusting.
One centralized authority to control all AI. And the goal is to have this AI not just censor information like it's doing now on social media, for example. They want it to basically write all of the information. So basically people will be, on the new internet, they'll be consuming information, but it'll all be written by AI essentially. That's like essentially what they want to do as they map it out. Have it like basically shape people's minds and make people control how people receive reality by dominating the information space and all the information people have access to, and like everything they see and do. Hence the whole like push into augmented reality, Neuralink. I mean, that's like the final phase, I guess, of all of this. But it's to basically deepen our dependence on this stuff and have the algorithm continue to choose for us to a point where we don't even know how to choose for ourselves anymore. But again, that's for the plebs. There's this other class that's going to be cognitively enhanced and be making all the decisions and directing how, AI develops and whatever.
Have you been following the debate between closed source AI and open source AI?
No, not really.
So the idea is that there's a battle within AI right now. If AI is here and it's going to be here, moving forward, we're at a critical point in the history of artificial intelligence where we really need open source large language models and training models to outcompete the open AIs, Microsoft's, Google's of the world, and essentially give the plebs the power of AI hosted on their own servers, so that they can avoid the walled garden closed source structure provided by the open AIs of the world. It's very confusing because it's open AI, but it's closed source. And then you have like Sam Altman and Google and Microsoft going in front of Congress a few months ago and basically saying, yes, please regulate us. Let us create this regulatory moat so that we are the gatekeepers of artificial intelligence.
Yeah, anytime the private, super powerful corporate world goes like, regulate me harder, daddy, in front of Congress, there is fuckery afoot for sure. Basically what you have to keep in mind here, and a lot of people forget this too, Silicon Valley, pretty much all of those main companies were made by like intelligence services or the military, or with funding from one or two, or if they weren't initially, are now contractors and all intertwined with the national security state. So, okay. That's why we have these things like people now getting upset about Facebook censoring stuff, but Facebook, was essentially tied up with DARPA and, the CIA through Peter Thiel from from the very beginning, right? So is it really that surprising that they would censor on behalf of the state? No, they're an independent private company. No, that's like a total, that's a lie. Like the whole thing about Silicon Valley being all these like humble entrepreneurs tinkering around in their garage and look at what we've made with the American entrepreneurial spirit. I mean, that's such bullshit. Like if you look into any of these big companies, you always had, these powerful entities of the state there. And so they're extensions of state power. Even if you want to think that they weren't necessarily at the origins, you can't deny that now. I mean, they fused essentially. That's why you have people like Eric Schmidt, which is why reading this book is really important. This is the most influential guy on AI policy in the US right now. He's funding salaries of like all of the Biden administration's top AI people. It's totally illegal for him to do that, but he's doing it. And even like mainstream media, like Politico's reporting on it, and nothing's happened. It's crazy. It's just, he's in charge. And he ran the National Security Commission on AI, which basically laid out all of the policies. And that commission was the CIA, and people tied up with the CIA, like former heads of NQTEL that are very close friends of Schmidt, military people that are also tied up with Schmidt because he used to be head of not the head, but used to be involved with the Defense Innovation Board. And then, the big Silicon Valley companies, Amazon, Microsoft, all of those guys deciding what happens. I mean, they're really the same entity at this point because they're all either military intelligence contractors. And you can't really decide where one ends and the other one ends. And you have all of these Silicon Valley billionaires, they fund Congress essentially at this point, or the DNC or the RNC. So, yeah. The national security state Silicon Valley blob is what runs the US, and they're going to have their AI. And so they're really, I think what's going on now in terms of the battles of AI, well, I mean, sure, there's this open source component, but there also is this competition over like which elite faction, essentially, there's this blob in the US, and there's also like a BRICS blob, I guess, like in China, for example, of their tech companies, who's going to get their AI adopted by emerging markets in the global South. And that's where a lot of the focus is to do all this stuff, in Latin America, Africa, Southeast Asia. It's I don't know, definitely something to look at there in terms of the dynamics, because they talk pretty openly about it. But the justification that, these groups like Schmidt's group give for, winning that factional battle is in order to beat China, we have to become China, and we have to compete with China's, what they call China's civil military fusion model, which is, civilian sector, the private sector, and the military are fused in China. They're working together towards this goal. So, the US has to develop a model equivalent to that, which is, that is fascism. That is straight up fascism, guys. And that is what Eric Schmidt, who is basically one of the people puppeteering the Biden administration, because obviously Joe Biden is not in charge of shit, that's what he wants to do with the U.S. And
I was going to say, now that you mention it, it's pretty hilarious because the effort that the government's putting in to put up a facade that there is some separation between the government and the private sector. It's like Kamala Harris is our AI czar. It's like, what? Like, what the fuck does she know about AI?
No, I mean, yeah, that's nuts. Yeah, the AI czar is actually Eric Schmidt. They just won't tell you because he's funding all their experts and like developing all the policies with like his people. It's like he's like single-handedly funding most of the Federation of American Scientists and stuff. I mean, it's just unreal. But then at the same time, you have the Schmidt crowd, and then you have the Peter Thiel crowd, right? And the Peter Thiel crowd is very involved in the development of this AI weapon and AI surveillance technology. They've been testing a lot of it out in Ukraine and are going to be testing it out in the Middle East now for sure.
Yeah, and I saw in your newsletter, it wasn't you who wrote an article about it, but I can't recall her name, but was diving into Andril.
Stravula Pabst, yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And yeah, Andril Palmer Luckey who created Oculus, went and started this private defense company. And
Yeah.
it's
Well,
all
Palmer
AI
Luckey
run.
was a Thiel fellow, right? So he got a bunch of money from Peter Thiel, and then he makes Oculus Rift, and then it gets bought by Facebook, where Peter Thiel has been sort of directing, at least in the early days, was very involved in directing stuff as their first big investor. And at the same time, he was making the CIA front, otherwise known as Palantir. Yeah, a lot of interesting stuff happening there, obviously. And now Palmer Luckey is running Anduril, which is making a lot of this AI weapon stuff for the military, but also a lot of it has been already set up, that tech, on the US-Mexico border to like basically autonomously do border control stuff. And they're not stopping people from coming in, so it's very possible that it's mainly there to stop people from leaving at some point. Not to black pill people, but
Oh.
Sorry.
No, but because it's funny, because I was at an event a few weeks ago, and Anduril was a point of topic, and the way it's being pitched is like, hey, if you're conservative, you don't like the big military budget, Anduril is going to be able to accomplish what the U.S. military can accomplish with 2% of the budget, and that's how people are getting
autonomous
into
drones that don't really have that much human oversight. And I mean, that the Ukrainian military is doing that now. I don't think it's necessarily with Anduril drones, even though Anduril drones are like used by the Ukrainian military, but they're like they've gotten rid of human oversight on some of their drone attacks now. That is so bad. I mean, that's like Skynet level crap. We should not be supporting that. And I mean, I don't know. I think it's silly that there's like libertarian leaning people that fall for this, because it's like, aren't you empowering the state with like doom weapons? Like, shouldn't you not
but
be
it's
into
cheaper.
that? I don't know.
It's cheaper. We save tax money.
Yeah,
That's how
well,
it's
I
being
mean,
pitched.
I know. Well, they always have their pitch, right? It's cheaper, it's easier, it's more convenient. But what will you lose? Human
I don't think we had
oversight
much
over war? The AI deciding who lives and who dies? Okay. I don't like that trade-off, personally. And
No.
also, I mean, the wars, why aren't people remembering that the whole point is that the wars are banker wars?
Yeah.
So like, oh, okay, the banker wars will be cheaper. What a win. I don't really see that as being good. Why don't we destroy the bankers and then their wars will stop?
Well, that's I watched the 45-minute documentary on the banker wars after shit started popping up in Israel and Palestine. I forget if it was in that or I just continued falling down a rabbit hole, but you mentioned it in the beginning of the show. We should probably get back to like the origins of Zionism. You had Mayor Rothschild, or one of the Rothschilds, at the beginning of the story.
Let's go back farther. So again, go to mintpressnews.com, search for my old article, The Untold, Untold Story or Untold History of Christian Zionism. It's one of the two. So Christian Zionism, and really Christian Zionism precedes Zionism. Yeah. So the founding father of Zionism, sorry, my cough keeps coming back. The founding father of Zionism is Theodor Herzl, who wrote this book called The Jewish State. I don't know. I was either the end of the 19th century or early 20th century. But the Puritans back in the 17th century in Britain and then later in the American colonies were calling for a Jewish ethno-state in Palestine back then as a necessary requisite to fulfill end times prophecy, so that basically we need to make this happen so Jesus will come back. That was the mentality there. And then, it didn't really get that far with the Puritans alone, but then you have this one guy come on the scene who's a British preacher, John Nelson Darby, I think is his name, if I remember correctly. Sorry, I wrote about this stuff a few years ago, so I may get a little weird on the names. But he basically developed, I think it's called Christian dispensationalism, which sort of divides history into different eras. Like, so now we're in the Messianic era and all of that. And he also developed the rapture as a thing. So, the rapture is very common in American Christianity, but it didn't exist until the early 1800s. No one believed in it before, and it has no scriptural basis. It doesn't. There's no scriptural basis for the rapture in the Bible. There's nothing that says it anywhere. Just letting people know. Because there's a lot of people that are like in this messianic movement within Christian Zionism. Oh, we have to, all this stuff has to be happen to be fulfilled, because once it happens, you know, there'll be the third temple, when it's there, will trigger the beginning of the tribulation, and the rapture has to happen before the tribulation, so we won't be here and we won't have to suffer all this stuff that we helped create. Okay, but no one believed in the rapture until the 1800s, and it was this one guy in his church that developed it. So it's not in the Bible. So try not to make hell on earth, please. That's what I'm trying to get at there. Anyway, so this guy became really influential, and it kind of spread all over the place. And you basically had a couple different things happen in the 1800s. But one that's really important is that you start having like elite people in America and Britain getting really involved with this idea of an ethno-state, a Jewish ethno-state in Palestine. And it was at the time completely rejected by the Jewish community globally, really. Not into it at all. And so there's this one rabbi that was sort of into it. Kalisher is his last name. And he sort of developed this movement, but it was very fringe at the time in Judaism, that we can't wait for God to fulfill the Messianic era, so we have to hasten the coming of the Jewish Messiah. And this sort of torch has been picked up since by the Chabad Lubavitch movement, which is very, very influential, by the way. So, for example, in the Trump administration, you have Mike Pence and you have Mike Pompeo, but Jared Kushner is very tied up with the Chabad Lubavitch movement. So is Netanyahu. So is Robert Maxwell, and a lot of different powerful actors over the years. Anyway, getting ahead of myself, sorry. So Kalisher wrote a letter in like 1830 something to one of the Rothschilds, yeah? And then the guy, Charles Taze Russell, that later creates this church that becomes the Jehovah's Witnesses, also writes to the Rothschilds asking for an ethno-state in Palestine. And there's a few of these letters that are written, and then eventually you get the Balfour Declaration in like 1917. But before then, you get something called the Blackstone Memorial, which is like at the end of the 1800s, you have a letter from some of the most powerful people in the United States, none of them Jewish really. Well, there might have been out of 100 something signatories, like a handful of Jewish people, calling, it was written to the Secretary of State of the US at the time. I forget who was president. But they're calling for the establishment of this state in Palestine. And this is all before Theodore Herzl, right, was even around. And the people that signed that Blackstone Memorial, it's J.P. Morgan, J.D. Rockefeller, members of Congress, mayors of New York and Boston, Supreme Court justices. I mean, like super powerful people. They're all, WASPs. They're not Jewish people, right? And they're saying we need this to happen. And then if you look into the history of Theodore Herzl himself, his whole movement was shaped by a British guy who I think was stationed at the British Embassy in Austria, William Heckler, who was like he's a Freemason, totally obsessed with the Third Temple, had like replicas of the Third Temple in his office, was just totally obsessed with it, and felt like the ethno-state and Jewish ethno-state in Palestine had to happen for the end times. He's the guy that like gets sort of mentors Herzl in some ways, connects him with powerful political people, specifically like in Germany and in that part of Europe, and like basically gives his movement, the early Zionist movement, political legitimacy, which of course later develops. And then you have powerful people in countries around the world, Europe and also the US, people like Louis Brandeis, for example, who are Jewish, who become very involved in the Zionist movement. But it took a while for people who were actually Jewish to want the ethno-state in Palestine. And you don't really have mass support for it in the Jewish community until after World War II. So there's a lot of powerful actors that wanted this to happen for very particular reasons a long, long time ago, and not necessarily because they think it's best for the Jewish community. So again, definitely go and read that article, because I mean, I'm just paraphrasing it and I wrote it 4 years ago, you know? But this history is really important because you have a lot of people who still feel that way guiding current events. And it's not for the benefit of Jewish people or for the Palestinians or for Christians or any of these people. You know, it's an obsession with the apocalypse. And people really need to look into this because I personally don't want to have the apocalypse happen and blow up everything because people think it's going to bring their Messiah back. Well,
Yeah, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy with no good outcome.
Yeah, it's like this whole thing of like, let's play God. I mean, you see it with transhumanism too. Let's become the gods now. And then these other people in this arena are like, well, let's not wait for God to do it. Let's take matters into our own hands and force him to do stuff. It doesn't work that way, guys.
Yeah. I'm just envisioning the domino meme where it's like some dude invents the idea of the rapture in the 17th century, and then the big domino is like nuclear holocaust in 2024 or something like that.
Well, it's like sad because there are like so many people that are like, it doesn't matter all the bloodshed in Israel and Palestine and what happens as a consequence of it in World War III. Let's support all of that because I'm going to get raptured out of here. Dude, it's not in the Bible. This one guy made it up. And if you look into him, he was like not a normal dude. Yeah. And I guess one figure I didn't really bring up in terms of the Christian Zionism thing was the guy that really popularized that outside, like among the masses. So before this view, right, you know, J.D. Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan, it was like very among the American elites. And there's also a lot of overlap with Freemasonry. So Charles Taze Russell, who I mentioned earlier, the guy that, you know, helped create the Jehovah's Witnesses, look up where he's buried and what his tombstone looks like. Just leave it there. Definitely an interesting fellow who happens to be buried under a giant Masonic pyramid.
Wait, what was his name?
Whatever.
James Russell?
Charles Taze Russell, Taze.
Charles Taze Russell. Look up the tomb. Logan, we're going to pull this up.
He would give like these big stadium speeches to Christians and Jews alike saying, we got to make a Jewish ethno-state in Palestine, like at the end of the 19th century and stuff. I mean, people overlook this stuff, but I mean, these are definitely influential people. But anyway, the guy I didn't mention who's really influential is a guy named Cyrus Scofield, who wrote the Scofield Reference Bible. And if you look into, yeah, there it is. I mean, totally normal dude wants to be buried under that, you know?
Jesus Christ.
Whatever. Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting.
No, not interrupting at all. Yeah, so the Scofield Reference Bible guy, basically, Cyrus Scofield had to leave where he was originally from because of corruption scandals, and like he abandoned his wife and daughters and was a drunk and was basically an all-around piece of shit. And eventually he gets involved with some like elite people, even though he's like sort of tried to revive himself as a different kind of, I guess, preacher, getting into this Christian dispensationalist movement that I talked about earlier. And then he, out of nowhere, this like small town preacher gets invited to join this like really exclusive secret society in New York called the Lotus Club. And where like Andrew Carnegie and the Vanderbilts and all these guys were members. So like, what is he doing there? And that club ended up financing him to write what is called the Scofield Reference Bible, and then arranged for him to go to England, where he got the first reference Bible printed by Oxford University. And then thanks to all these elite connections, it was basically became like the main Bible used in seminaries throughout the United States, and I think also in the UK. And this is important because so this Bible is it's the King James version, but it's like annotated by Cyrus Scofield, even though he wasn't a trained theologian and had started off like, having all these issues with like forging documents and bribing people and like, yeah. So anyway, that's his background. But he's interpreting all this stuff, and it basically became the standard for a lot of seminaries in the US, and that's how it sort of got out. And so a lot of interpretations of the Bible come from that are, things like that you hear from a lot of Christian Zionists, like if you curse Israel, you will be cursed, and if you bless Israel, you'll be blessed, which by these groups becomes something like, if you criticize Israel, you're cursing Israel, and so you're going against the Bible by saying anything negative about Israel's government. Right? And it goes back to that. And it comes from the Scofield Reference Bible. Very weird. I don't know. It's definitely worth looking into Cyrus Scofield and who he was, because, whether you're a Christian or not, I think honestly this history matters. And I think especially if you're a Christian, it matters, because, you should be concerned with, the lack of, how should I phrase this? Like, the focus of Christianity, in my opinion, should be, as close to the truth as Jesus taught it, right? Not necessarily like people like John Nelson Darby and all these guys in the 1800s and Cyrus Scofield adding their interpretations to it. Like maybe you should go back earlier before like all these centuries of like corrupt Catholic popes and then, corrupt people like Cyrus Scofield started interpreting stuff for, their political benefit, So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely worth considering some of this stuff, you know what I mean? So, again, if you want to know how the Middle East is going to play out, or at least rather where they're going to try and take this, definitely look into the stuff. Because it's been going on for a long time, and it definitely precedes Theodore Herzl and all of that stuff to a significant degree. And this same line of thinking is still influencing events today.
Lineage of radical Christians trying to bring about the rapture is why we're... It's
not just Christians, though.
Yeah.
It's like there's people in Israel and people in the U.S. and arguably beyond. I mean, I'm not... I haven't studied Islam that extensively. So a lot of this line of research at Mint Press happened because I majored in religion in college. So I had a lot of background, but I never really have studied Islam. But I know there's messianic varieties of Islam as well. So it's very possible that on their side, they also sort of want to bring out their Messiah too. I mean, it's more than possible. You have all these different groups pushing for their different end time scenarios that they think are going to favor them in some way. But again, to go back to this quote from Gareth Ike that I sort of said earlier, let's get off the chessboard, stop playing these guys' game, because it's very bloody and it's very nasty. It's very against human freedom and the values that I think most, sane people share, right?
Yeah, no, it's, going back to the Bible, an eye for an eye will make the whole world blind. I'm not sure if that's the Bible or...
Well, that's sort of essentially happening now in terms of justifying, what's going on with Israel and Palestine and the increasing escalations. Right.
Yeah.
So.
No, it's been crazy to see just the vitriol spreading. We have protests here in the U.S., the Capitol building yesterday, embassies around the world. Everybody is out looking for blood. And like you said, I don't know how we can do it, but it definitely needs to happen. It's hey, people, everybody walk off the chessboard. You're being manipulated. And going back to...
Well, you may not be able to convince other people to walk off the chessboard, but definitely don't feed into the extreme, let's get all divided in anger, hate, and anyone that doesn't believe what I believe is a terrorist mentality. That is so not helpful. And it's, it was totally what was not helpful about COVID too,
and it is helpful too.
You didn't get the vax, you're a biosecurity threat to me and my family and my grandma, And
now it's becoming clear
same deal.
That what was promised, that this wasn't gene therapy, it's becoming clear that there was a lot of DNA that was not supposed to be in those vials.
Well, this is what happens when you trust the craziest people at DARPA in the military to make a vaccine for you without any sort of safety studies of any meaning and oversight, and call it Operation Warp Speed.
They jabbed a dozen mice. It looked good. Looked good in the mice.
Yeah. Yeah, I think how many days did they follow up on the mice too? I feel like it was not long. No. Sort of like those Monsanto Roundup studies where they like knew that the mice were all going to get tumors after like 3 months, and so they made sure the study only lasted 2 months.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but it is.
But trust the science.
Well, trust the science, and then
because it's not like science can be manipulated by the people who manipulate literally everything.
I mean, and it's hilarious going back to the lack of critical thinking that exists in the world and the attempt to diminish that even further with AI. It's like science is literally don't trust anything, like test. It's like
no, literally AI is being set up to be like the mother of all psyops. It's like use AI to like put out a bunch of content, pretend it's people, like just give people crazy information overload so they're totally bewildered, and then depend on another AI to filter out the news for you and tell you what you should believe. They literally say that in the book, and that's like what's happening. It's nuts.
That's where, I mean, things like Noster, that's what I think it's going to have to get to is literally when you send a message out on the internet, and this is a problem that still hasn't been solved yet, but you should have something equivalent to a YubiKey. It has a private key on it that you sign and attest to the message, like this actually came from me, the physical human being. And if I don't have this PGP signature or this private key signed next to anything I put on the internet, it's likely a bot.
Well, it's definitely going to be superior to former Twitter, which is,
X.
verify all humans.
Well, they just came out with their new privacy policy.
That whole let's in.
They just came out with the privacy policy where they're going to feed all the information into their AI. I'm like, oh, accept.
Oh. Doesn't Elon Musk back OpenAI? I'm so shocked.
Well, apparently he backed away from
it.
it.
But he has another AI company that he's made too. That's going to be all tied into the X super family of companies.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure you've been paying attention, but you can see the light nudging that's happening on X to really cattle herd people to like never leave the platform. Like the one change they made 2 weeks ago, which is like if you have a link going outside of the site, it's just like a picture. It doesn't even have like an article, subtitle, and metadata. It's
only going to get worse. Yeah. It's only going to get worse. And there's a lot of people who like just can't live without social media. So like they'll just stay forever and get psyoped into oblivion by AI. Uh-oh.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Noster? I know you're on there. We talked about it briefly in the past.
I've been kind of tied up for like 3 or 4 months, so I haven't really gotten to like use it or really Twitter much. I'm kind of avoiding it because it not Noster necessarily, but like Twitter, just because I mean, just social media in general can be just kind of exhausting. And obviously the algorithm is, well, for people that don't remember, like Facebook and some of these other companies got caught like tweaking their algorithm to like manipulate your emotions, mainly to make you feel like shit, basically. So I'm pretty sure they still do that, whether it's Twitter or elsewhere.
Twitter, I had to stop looking at Twitter as much because the For You tab for me is literally all murder videos. I'm like, I don't want to watch murder.
Yeah, a lot of it is like, so I wasn't enjoying it either and was like, nah, I don't need this. And so, if I want to tweet something, I'll like, it'll be tweeted, but I'm not reading anything on it anymore.
Yeah.
Because, all right, so, after reading this book by Kissinger and Schmidt, basically, who were basically the intellectual architects of current U.S. AI policy, and when you consider that, like, the U.S. military literally like almost 10 years ago, started studying how to use social media to, their words, control humans like drones. Okay. Definitely want to keep your perception of reality yours. You know what I mean? If the goal of AI for them is to have AI control how you perceive reality and that you stop being able to do that yourself, I mean, that's like the ultimate mind control and population control. That's what this is about. And they openly say in the book, this has major implications for free societies and even free will. Okay. And it's pretty clear what they want out of this. So the best way to, fight against that, at least on an individual level, is to keep your mind your own. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that means having very robust critical thinking skills and not having political saviors that you just believe whatever they say, and also not being online 100% of the time.
Yeah. Do you have any hope that everything they're attempting to do, from the CBDC to AI to this tearing down and rebuilding of the temple, it's just too much for them to control and contain at this point, and that they're going to lose control of it? People are going to recognize, like, all right,
totally,
what the hell just happened? Because it seems like it's becoming extremely overwhelming to an extent.
Too many moving parts, and they can't manage it all, which I think is part of why they're so desperate to get AI to a certain point too, because they have to have AI manage a lot of it. Okay, but this is where freedom tech people need to get creative, because it's not enough just to develop stuff where you're like, okay, I want to make alternatives to existing big tech products. Like, how do you not only divest from big tech AI products, how do you help fuck up big tech AI products? You know?
Make them hallucinate
like, how can
faster.
You feed Microsoft's AI a bunch of bullshit data that is basically like throwing a wrench in its algorithm?
Yeah.
For example. Right? I mean, this is an info war, but it's a tech war. There's a lot going on. And so, like, maybe we're the underdogs, but at the same time, these guys have taken on a lot more than they can chew. For sure.
Yeah.
And I think they're, very confident they're going to be able to control stuff, and AI is going to be able to do this and that. But, okay, so just like every industry that, like, these guys control, there's a lot of corruption. Like, a lot of AI companies oversell their AI and their algorithms, So, like, I wrote about one in 2020 with COVID. This Israeli company got this contract in Rhode Island to, like, predict COVID outbreaks before they happen. Yeah. And based on the company, and this is, like, not audited by anyone independent, this is, like, the company statistic, they said that their AI was, like, 73% accurate. Right? So if it's audited independently and it's, like, 50%, it's like flipping a coin. How is that useful? Right? So, like, there's a lot of grift, just like all the industries that these guys, because it's all about money and power, right? They often create inferior products because of the obsession with money and power. So, like, there's problems with their AI. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I do think at some point, though, based on what is in this Kissinger book, they're probably going to try and fake artificial, like, general artificial intelligence or whatever, like the singularity. They might fake that and try and make this new, like, AI-driven religion and stuff. And the dataism religion thing that, like, Yuval Noah Harari is really into. I mean, they might try and go that route, but I doubt it will be. I mean, it won't be real. It'll just be a psyop.
Sam Altman's come out and said that they've discovered AGI internally in OpenAI already.
Oh, okay, yeah. So that's amazing. Okay, so, well, amazing in the sense that, like, it's hilarious and he's full of shit.
Logan, see if you can find that on Twitter.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up. So I did a video with my friend Ryan Christian a while ago when Google covertly tried to do the same thing with their large language model, Lambda. I don't know if you remember, there was an engineer that got coverage in, like, the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times being like, it's sentient, guys. And he had, like, these chat logs, and then a few months later had to admit that he, like, forged the chat logs, and it was, like, all bullshit. But there was this huge, like, media push, like, AI is sentient, the singularity's here, and all these people got, like, jacked up on it,
Yeah.
But there's, like, a whole effort, I think, to basically, do, just fake it, basically. Because once you have people being like, oh, there's this new great intelligence, a lot of the stuff that's posited in the Schmidt-Kissinger book becomes a lot easier to implement,
Yeah, I found a tweet.
And
so
it doesn't have to be real.
No. So, like, here, pull this up, Logan. Apparently it was Sam Altman in a Reddit thread basically saying AGI has been achieved internally. There is a community note on this tweet saying that he responded saying, I was just joking.
Right. Okay. Well, okay. Just like I think it's a good rule to like never trust the Fed or Jamie Dimon. I also don't think it's a good idea to ever trust the WorldCoin dweeb. So like he's probably full of shit. Yeah. Sorry. He's like literally running a scam, stealing people's biometric data and selling and giving them shit coins in return. Like,
have you seen the
probably
allegations?
Wouldn't believe the guy. He's like a clear grifter.
And have you seen the allegations from his sister?
Oh no, more stuff to look up. Lucky me.
Allegations. I don't want to get in trouble for slander or anything, but apparently his sister has been on Twitter for like years saying that he molested her when they were younger.
Oh no, I did not know that.
Yeah.
But
that's being swept under the rug pretty aggressively.
Oh, gross.
Yeah.
Well, he's gross. I can't say it really shocks me that there's a high possibility he might be grosser than I previously thought, I guess. Yeah. But basically, I think they're going to fake this singularity thing to sort of get people to jump on the AI bandwagon and be like, okay, let's put it in charge of everything. Because that's what they want. But frankly, it's like, like I said earlier, I don't think it's really working the way they want. And ultimately, if they get the singularity or they convince people they get it, they can do like this whole like Wizard of Oz thing, right? Where basically like they're the men behind the curtain and there's this AI and like AI issues all these like edicts and diktats and like, oh, well, AI is super intelligent and way smarter than us. So we got to do whatever the AI says, guys, But I mean, it could just be like Henry Kissinger and Eric Schmidt behind the curtain being like, let's carpet bomb Iran, and
you should only have
AI
one kid.
says it and yeah, eat the bugs, whatever. Like AI says it all. It's for the good. It's the super intelligence. So we just got to do whatever it says. And, they say in their book too, and a lot of other like AI experts and thinkers, AI doesn't have logic or, think, quote unquote, like humans do. So it can't explain how it reaches its conclusions, So it's all this opaque decision making. Computer says no, and that's it, right? But they don't have to have actual singularity, actual intelligence. They just fake it and act like AI is doing all that stuff, but it's really just them being like, oh, cool, now we have carte blanche to do whatever the F we want, and have no accountability or ever have to explain ourselves again. If you're the elite, would you want that?
Oh, yes.
Would you fake the singularity to get that? Yes, especially if you can't achieve the singularity because you're overestimating AI and overhyping it all the time.
Yeah. Well, it's like...
I mean, AI can do some stuff good, but it can't do everything they say it can do.
No, and that's why it's conflicting to me and why I brought up the open source versus closed source battle that's going on right now to you, because I get value, particularly for image generation for the website, for thumbnails. It does produce pretty cool images. And there are stable diffusion models, open source models that I can run on my own server and sort of train it with our brand aesthetic to like pump out thumbnails very easily. And for me, I don't have the money to hire a designer and to do that, or the time to do that. And so like that provides value to me. And I could see a scenario in which I have my own hosted AI model on my own computer that I control that doesn't connect to the outside world. And I just feed it data and say, hey, help me sort of crunch these numbers and give me back an income statement balance sheet with the financials that sit on my server. I can do that quickly. Like that could be valuable to me. And other things too.
Well, I'm not saying AI is bad. I'm saying the worst people in the world are making a bunch of AIs right now, and they want to put the AIs they make in charge of everything.
Yes.
That's bad.
That is terrible.
Precisely because they're the worst people in the world, right? So, that's like my main point here. Like, I'm not trying to be like a Luddite or saying like, don't use technology, whatever. But you have to be responsible, and you have to be very like aware of the plans of these people and how they plan to use those technologies, and also how they plan to regulate them, and if they plan to make your ability to, do what you just mentioned with AI illegal, right?
Yeah.
Because they want to make financial anonymity illegal. They want to keep control of all of these tools in the technology and centralize it, right? So, I mean, they might try and go that route. I mean, I don't really know.
Oh,
But
they're definitely going
I
to. I
mean,
mean, that's why Sam Altman's in front of Congress. That's why the Google people are in front of Congress. I mean, it's so crazy how, and that's why I think your statement is that they're really rushing this because they think they're losing control holds a lot of weight in my mind. Is because like the fact that AI became popular this time last year, and then not even a year later, less than 10 months later, you have all the heads of AI on Congress being like, regulate me harder, daddy. Don't let anybody else use this.
yeah.
Like, it's a very
Yeah.
accelerated pace.
Exactly.
Like it went from nothing to an
Totally.
existential
And
crisis
again,
in 7 months.
yeah, and it's gonna, I'm telling you, next year's gonna be even faster than this year. It's gonna be nuts. There's gonna be a lot of stuff popping off.
Yeah.
So
we're gonna have the great
definitely
election.
time to get ready.
The great election to distract all of us and divide and confuse people in the middle of all of it.
If you want to take what's coming seriously, treat what's happening with the election as the political circus that it is, and give it the amount of your attention it deserves, which is not much. Yeah. People, I think, should honestly be focusing on like how to divest from the people trying to enslave us and get prepared for what's to come.
Yeah. No, I mean, even this week.
And not being like.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say, just even this week, I don't want to call what's happening, I don't want to diminish what's happening in the Middle East and label it as a distraction, but like here in the U.S., like the financial system, something broke on the back end of the financial system. It's very obvious if you look at like interest rates and price of gold. And then on top of that, on the civil liberties side of things, they just jailed that guy, James Mackey, I believe his name is, Douglas Mackey, for 7 months for making a meme about Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election.
Right.
And so like you have like political dissidents getting thrown in the gulag. Obviously, all the January 6 people have been thrown in the gulag.
Here's the other thing I forgot to bring up about WEFPAC. Which is involved with the UN and Interpol too, because Interpol's a big part of it. And that's important because it's not just about online and financial anonymity, like eliminating that. It's also about labeling people that go against that ban as cyber criminals. And you can also be a cyber criminal for publishing misinformation online, right? And there's this push at the UN under SDG 16, which is also the SDG that digital ID is folded in and all this other stuff is, to basically, prosecute cyber criminals globally and have Interpol go after people, like empower Interpol to do that, which is part of WEFPAC. And the DOJ, for people in the US, also part of it. All very bad, right? So anyway, Interpol developed its sustainable policing goals. I mean, I wish I was making this up, but it's to complement the sustainable development goals. And it's about deciding who's a cyber criminal and who's not. And basically, again, people that publish wrong think online, people that facilitate, privacy enhancing technologies that could be used for money laundering,
Yeah.
All that stuff. And I mean, they've already been doing this in like the crypto space for a while, like anyone, like going after people that, developed mixers and stuff like this. Or
yeah. But this week too, they tried to like pin Bitcoin as supporting Hamas, and like the best evidence they had, they were like, this one wallet got $2,000. It's like, what? Like they rolled in with the guns he gave Ukraine. Like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, no, I know. So like before this happened, this conflict happened, I gave this speech in May in Miami, right? And I was like referencing all these headlines saying that the next frontier in terrorism is Bitcoin and the dark web. It's been all over the place for years. They're going to come after it. And it's not like it's just like, they're going to illegalize Bitcoin or anything. I think they're going to try and co-opt what they can out of Bitcoin and then try and negate the potential Bitcoin has to be a tool for financial freedom, basically.
Yeah, that's why I completely agree with you. It is our job as people fighting to bring freedom tech to the world, Bitcoin being one of those technologies that we have to get serious and really batten down the hatches.
So for like the Bitcoin, so for like the Bitcoin community, there's like really two camps as I see it. There's the people that are like, I'm into Bitcoin because I think it's going to make me shitloads of money and I can't wait for $1 million Bitcoin and yada, yada, yada. Yeah. And then there's the people who were like, I'm in Bitcoin because I want to destroy the bankers and their hold on society and return financial freedom to the people. There is only one side there that's legitimate.
Yeah.
And there's only one side there that is like deserving of respect. And the other people might as well go work for Jamie Dimon and fuck off.
Yeah. That is one of the memes in Bitcoin is you come to get rich, but you stay for the revolution. So I do agree those two sides exist, but I think the more people spend.
Well, I mean, you can look at it as a money thing, but if you give no crap about the financial freedom side and you're willing to collaborate to turn Bitcoin into a tool for the same people it was supposedly created to, fight against, I don't respect you.
Yeah.
You suck. That's how I feel about it.
That's why we've really been beating the drum, like, don't buy the ETF. The ETF is the whole BlackRock ETF. The fact that BlackRock was like calling Bitcoin like terrible, it was like anti-ESG, and then you have this complete about face, like, oh, we love Bitcoin, we're going to get the largest ETF.
I think they can use it to benefit them as things move forward. Yeah. And there's a fight to be had for the control of Bitcoin. For sure. Do you want the Larry Finks to win? I don't. I think it's pretty clear, at least, people that believe in like financial freedom, like what side to choose. And there's a lot of work to be done there. Because if the people that care about financial freedom just sit back and don't do anything to keep Bitcoin as as potentially helping that, it will be lost and it will be hollowed out and turned into a zombie that serves the same powers that be that are fucking everything up. Let's not do that, guys.
Completely agree.
Anyway, I've got to go because I've got a hungry baby who's upset. So
well, you go feed your baby.
Probably have another minute or two. Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming back on the show. There's a lot of stuff popping off. I'm sure
absolutely.
We'll talk sooner rather than later because things are, I don't think, going to decelerate from here. But no, I'm happy to see you. I'm happy to see you back in the saddle. I know it was a tough winter for you, and so now I was thinking about you a lot in the last few months, and
well, thanks, Marty. I mean, it's nice to be back and talking about stuff and not just being a mom 24/7. But it is my first and most important job. So, got to do what you got to do.
Yes.
Yeah. So
kids always come first.
Hopefully we'll be back to work kind of normally with a better internet connection next month. I'd like that very much. But it's kind of slow going because my son, since we got out, has been in and out of the hospital. We have to go back on Sunday for a few days. Hopefully that'll be the last of it for a while and I can kind of work again. That'd be nice.
Well, I'll be praying for you guys and thank you. Keep crushing it. Keep sticking the needle in the eyes of these despots who want to control
it's
us.
What I live for, I guess. That and the people I care about,
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
We're gonna win. A lot of black pills, a lot of history, but there are some white pills too.
Well, I guess it's a black pill in the sense if you feel like you have like no agency over events, and I don't really think that's true.
No.
I think the people that invest in preparing and divesting and taking responsibility for themselves will be pretty well off when things, hit the fan, so to speak. I mean, it's going to be crazy, but you just got to be in the right mindset for it, and you got to be practical about how to prepare.
Yeah, and also if you're out there, because I know a lot of you are out there, you email me. There's a lot of people in prominent positions who believe the same things we do, but feel that they can't speak up. They self-censor. Speak up. That's what we need more of too. Well,
people just need to stop being afraid about it. Like the stakes are very high. And I mean, if you're like afraid about it all the time, I mean, to paraphrase Dune, fear is the mind killer. It's very true. And from people that have survived economic collapse, like in Argentina, for example, I live in South America, so I know people from Argentina that had to live through that. They all say your state of mental preparedness is like the most important, because if you're panicking and freaking out and you don't think clearly, you make bad decisions.
Yeah. Mentally prepare. We'll end it there. Whitney, It's always a pleasure.
Likewise, Marty. Thanks.
Peace and love, freaks. Tiki.
Oh, hey, it's me. Heavy stuff, yeah? So, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, maybe Stephen Arrow. Did Whitney disagree with anything that I've ever told you? And I've only watched all these videos this week, but this one was made 2 months ago. Did Whitney disagree with anything that I've told you is happening? We got a poll. Can corporate AI be trusted in any way? God help. 2 out of 3 of you say yes. You're completely and totally insane. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. That's a real shame. It can't be trusted. You would be better off having Jeffrey Dahmer as your cellmate. Well, he's dead. You'd be better off having a serial killer as your cellmate than trusting corporate AI. You would have a better chance of living because you could have a relationship with the serial killer. It's just like cops. Like a serial killer is nice to some people. He's not mean to everybody. He's just mean to the people he kills. So, you could be a serial killer's friend. Just like you could be a corporation's friend. Well, you could be a corporation's slave because corporations don't exist. It's just qualified immunity for oligarchs. It's just corporate immunity. Who the fuck would give corporations the most destructive invention in the history of man? Corporations, pure human enslaving, money printing, organized criminals called corporations are running the show. Unfucking believable. You can't tell me you saw that coming in the end of 2023, that our entire world would be run by artificial intelligence. All of it. And most certainly app slavery, for God's sake. Let's look at this poll. Gotta stop sharing this. Look at this poll. 2 people actually said yes, corporate AI can be trusted. How? Who would you trust? Well, that's not really. I mean, in theory, yes, but a corporation is not a corporation. Is not a corporation. Monopolistic global corporations are what we're talking about. And see, that's the thing. Even small corporations don't have equal justice or equal protection with large corporations. They'll be happy to take down your small corporations while they're allowing Uber and DoorDash and Lyft to perpetrate app slavery upon the planet. So no, you do have a point there that small corporations will be ruthlessly shut down because small corporations are also called small businesses, and small business people don't get off of the consequences. Small business people are the ones paying DoorDash's extortion. Now Uber and Lyft are going to have the extortion that they're going to want you to exclusively source your automobiles through them. So it's going to be the company store. You're not only going to be a slave to Uber and Lyft, but you're going to be a slave to your car. Probably live in your fucking car too if you're lucky. But they'll just turn you off, right? They could just turn your car off if they don't when they don't want you to work, or turn your car on when they want you to work. They could give you alternate working days, and your car just doesn't start on the days when it's turned off. You'll have no control over anything in your life. You will be a terrified victim, because if you lose that app slavery contact through your slave phone, maybe there's not another app slavery, or maybe you get dinged in the social credit system, so you can't get any more app slavery gigs, and so now you're going to starve. Now you're going to starve because there's no money supply. The only way to get money supply is by playing their AI game. Only way to get uh, so there's something called free tech. They talked about it, I think, in there. Free technology. There are many brilliant technologists that are creating technology to come after we leave iPhone and the Android devices and Microsoft and Google behind. That are designed to give us options outside of this matrices that is already undertaking or overtaking humanity. Uh, so, so you see what we talked about, right? That you already know that it's an inside job. Your own government sold you out to this scam. Uh, it is fraud. It's just unprosecuted fraud. It is fraud. It's just fraud that is allowed by the anarcho-fascists to be perpetrated upon you. And everything that they are offering you in terms of your access to their money supply, which they both print and hoard, the only thing, and look at these losers. Look at these losers. These are the multi-billions and billions and billions of dollars. WeWork just died here in Portland. It's just, WeWork just got shut down in Portland. They shut down there. It's $20 billion that they wasted on this thing. The scam of Sam Bankman-Fried, the scam of Elizabeth, whatever her name is. Billions and billions and billions of dollars in this fraud. And so what I wrote to you early this year is investment propaganda tells you what oligarchs want you to know, which is always too late and usually a scam. I should have said always a scam. I apologize. Meanwhile, a corporatocracy hoards the wealth of the world, enslaving all but the elite members of society. Cannibalistic capitalism is this final phase of the empire. So I wasn't wrong. So let's watch this. We've watched it before. And one of the things that is talked about in terms of the fascist Nazi regime that killed so many people with such atrocities is how that happened. And how people ask, how did that happen? That people stood by while these atrocities were happening. Well, it's happening right now, and it was happening to people that were dehumanized and deinstitutionalized and defrauded and robbed and minimized, and then all of the sudden, uh, you could just make them go away. And so the same thing is happening. They call that the banality of evil, how people stayed around. But the same banality of evil is going right now, because the entire world knows that we're app slaves. The entire world knows. And that's why we don't get respect, because they know that we're working in a dog shit corporate AI scam. And so they're never going to look at you like some employee that should be tipped, or some worker that should be tipped, or some worker that is of consequence, because they know that you're just an app slave. They know that you're just uh, uh, a ghost worker that they'll never see again. They have no relationship with. They don't know you. You don't know them. That's not a tipping relationship. And so it's a lie that they set up the app slaves to divide and conquer them, to divide them against the consumers, to divide them against the restaurants. So the restaurants are price gouging, but they're not getting the money. The consumers are being price gouged and getting shitty service and bad food. And the app slaves are being enslaved and gaslighted and used and impoverished, and the risk outweighs the rewards. So, who's the winner? Well, the corporate AI is the winner. And why use corporate AI? Well, our friend Whitney Webb did a great job of explaining to you that that is how the corporations and the oligarchs can win, is if they can have a scalable way to control you. So when you're an app slave, you are playing into their game and their economy. You are, playing the world champion chess computer, and you're going to lose. And Whitney said it well. She even used the same analogy: step off, or she quoted somebody else: step off the board, step off the chessboard. You can't play their game. You cannot play their game. Here's a video for those. It's always good to watch again. If you think that there is some type of market economy, or there's some type of legitimacy even behind the behind, uh, beyond the scams of DoorDash and well, you only get a 1099 if you made over $600 for any given company, and those have to come out by sometime in January. I think it's by the end of January, but I don't remember for sure. But let's watch what the reality of global finance is, and why you can't play this game ever, not even a little bit. And of course, the scam and the ongoing drama of cryptocurrency is going to be solved by the government and AI too. There's no way they're letting uh, the blockchain and the internet run away with their money supply. That's not going to happen. The security state will step in, as Whitney Webb so well detailed. So let's play this video from Truth Matters. They wrote, if you're worried about ChatGPT, it's probably inadvisable to watch this. We talk about politicians being in the pockets of special interest. Might I be so bold as to suggest that the genie is long gone from the bottle? And we know that there are corporate law firms that keep any legislation from ever being enacted. And that's the game, because remember, they're going to outlive us. They only need to make, they don't, it's like the joke. If you're up in the tree with your friend, and they're putting on their tennis shoes as the bear is coming at you, and you say, do you don't think you can actually outrun that bear? And they say, I don't have to outrun the bear, I only have to outrun you. Right? So that's the game that we're playing here. Is they don't have to uh, outrun the consequences, they just have to outrun you, and then they won't even have to worry about it anymore. So if this scam, if they can end you and end this global labor laundering, while all the financial and legal shenanigans are going on, and move on, there won't be any recourse, and they'll just nuke the files. Nobody ever heard of you. They never. All you are is a data file that goes through a third party contractor. Nobody knows you. They never knew you. They never knew you. You never existed. DoorDash didn't exist. Uber didn't exist. It's all an illusion of corporate AI. And now, what's a bigger illusion of corporate AI? All of it.
What if I told you there is a robot that controls more wealth than any country on earth? A robot so powerful that in the last 10 years, it has quietly created the biggest company in the world. This is the story of a robot called Aladdin. It's Wall Street's best kept secret, and it's gobbling up every asset class across every industry. Aladdin now controls $21 trillion of our global economy. To put that in perspective, that's more than the $20 trillion GDP of the US, or the $15 trillion GDP of the entire European Union. The New Statesman wrote, the total physical cash of all 7 billion people and every company, bank vault, wallet, and piggy bank in the world is around $5 trillion. Aladdin has grown into a system responsible for more than 4 times the value of all the money in the world. This one robot directs the actions of the US Federal Reserve, almost every major bank and investment fund on Wall Street, and over 17,000 traders. It controls half of all ETFs, 17% of the bond market, 10% of the global stock market, and carries out 250,000 trades every day and billions of forecasts every week. Year after year, it hoovers up trillions of data points on every market, every company, every asset, and now even each of us, what we buy, sell, and say, so that it knows what to buy and what to sell far better than any human being. Every major bank, company, and investment fund has come to rely on Aladdin and its all-powerful AI and algorithms to beat the market. And if they didn't, they've collapsed and failed in Aladdin's wake. And you know what the craziest part of this story is? This robot is just getting started. So where did Aladdin come from and how did it get so powerful? Aladdin is the brainchild of Larry Fink, the founder of BlackRock, and its total dominance has made his company the biggest shadow bank in the world and the most powerful company on earth. The story you're about to hear is equally unbelievable and terrifying. In fact, you would think it was science fiction if it wasn't very real and happening today. This story starts in the 1980s when Larry Fink was making millions pioneering mortgage-backed securities at Wall Street Bank First Boston. That's right, the same mortgage-backed securities that caused the 2008 global financial crisis 20 years later. But back in the 80s, he was in an epic Wall Street rivalry with Louis Ranieri at Salomon Brothers, made famous as a big swinging dick in Michael Lewis's book Liar's Poker. Back then, Larry was making millions for the bank and was on track to be First Boston's CEO. And then in 1986, an error in the back office computer models led to Larry making the wrong trades and he lost the company $100 million. The result was Larry leaving the bank as a failure with a stupid computer to blame. With that experience, Larry had just one ambition: to build a super smart robot that could pick out risk and opportunity in the market and do it better than any computer or human could do. In 1988, he launched a new startup, BlackRock, with a tiny coding team to give birth to this robot. Its name, Aladdin, which stands for Asset, Liability, and Debt Derivative Investment Network. In its first 10 years, Aladdin was fed information about every asset, price movement, and risk variable in the global bond market, Larry's specialty. And in 1999, when Aladdin turned 11, Aladdin was getting so intelligent at picking losers and winners that Larry began selling access to its data to other Wall Street firms. That same year, he took BlackRock public on the New York Stock Exchange. Straight after the IPO, the dot-com bust burst, pushing a wall of money from the stock market to bonds, which Aladdin had become the undisputed world champion in. Within years, BlackRock had become a $1 trillion company, and as money started shifting back to shares, what did Larry do? He bought the asset management arm of Merrill Lynch, which was focused to shares. So the gift for Aladdin's 18th birthday, all the data points for the entire stock market, and suddenly Aladdin had a new playground, analyzing every stock trade and risk factor for every company on the stock market. As a result, today BlackRock, together with his two closest rivals, Vanguard and State Street, both of which also rely on Aladdin's mountain of knowledge, have become the biggest shareholders of over 40% of all public listed companies in America. 2008, the global financial crisis hits, and before Aladdin turns 21 years old, is caught on by every Wall Street bank and Timothy Geithner, the head of the Federal Reserve and the US Treasury. As soon as Lehman Brothers collapsed and the Wall Street meltdown began, the US government came calling to save the next collapsing bank, Bear Stearns. It was Aladdin who decided which assets to keep and which to leave in the $30 billion rescue package. And few people know it was a robot that saved America from disaster. With that first success, the Fed, US government, and now even European and Japanese central banks began relying on Aladdin to make the calls on where the $2.5 trillion of new money they printed should go. The majority of it, bonds and funding to prop up the mortgage companies and banks. But wait, aren't these exactly the assets that Aladdin and BlackRock already were invested in? Exactly. But growing protests of conflict of interest were drowned out by the noise of the printing presses printing more money, as the assets controlled by Aladdin rapidly grew to $11 trillion by 2013. In the last decade, Aladdin has gone from the leader to the dominator of all financial markets. With BlackRock's Barclays acquisition, it got iShares, Barclays Exchange Traded Funds Units, or ETFs. And with that, Aladdin moved from dominator of bonds and equities to dominator of ETFs, just as all the biggest investors shifted from mutual funds to ETFs. And that's when, in 2017, everything changed. On Aladdin's 29th birthday, Larry launched a top-secret project at BlackRock, codenamed Monarch. It led to the firing of his fund managers and replacing their funds with Aladdin's funds. The robot was now eliminating humans from the equation altogether. And as a result, today over 70% of all trades on US stock markets are decided by robots, with Aladdin leading the way. These trades are completed from beginning to end without a human involved, in high-frequency trading far faster than a human can execute. Now, if this was just a story about a robot taking over the job of Wall Street traders, you might not be so concerned, unless you're one of those traders. But in the last 3 years, as Aladdin hit $20 trillion in assets, incredibly, it has begun to consume and control at an even faster rate. First, in 2020, as Aladdin turned 32 years old, the US government and Federal Reserve again came calling as the pandemic hit. Aladdin was again the one to guide the nation in what was now $4 trillion of newly printed money. Where did the money go this time? Inexplicably, for the first time, the Fed began buying ETFs in 2020. Well, that's a little strange. And again, the cries of conflict of interest were drowned out by the money printing. And then Aladdin revealed its endgame. Recently, BlackRock acquired eFront, which collects data on the things that you and I own, including private equity and real estate. And since then, Aladdin has consumed eFront's data on the entire global real estate market. And yep, you guess what happened next. Over the last 2 years, BlackRock and other funds using Aladdin's data have begun buying up single-family homes, where they can afford to outbid the rest of us as they have unlimited financing at hyper-low interest rates. The result is home prices rising by 20% over the last 2 years and pushing now even big players like Zillow out of the market. And here we see Aladdin's endgame, to be the one hyper-intelligent AI robot that not just controls Wall Street assets, but all assets, public and private. Now, I'm not into conspiracy theories, but even a skeptic with eyes wide open can see the signs. We're already at a point where no one can compete without Aladdin. As CEOs and asset managers like Anthony Malloy are now saying, Aladdin is like oxygen. Without it, we wouldn't be able to function. And what about government regulation? Well, Joe Biden has appointed BlackRock executive Brian Deese as head of the National Economic Council, which basically means the oversight of Aladdin and BlackRock is now the responsibility of BlackRock. And Biden has also appointed BlackRock Chief of Staff, Wally Adeyemo, to be Assistant Secretary of the Treasury, which means BlackRock is now the Treasury as well as the Treasury Advisor. And this story is far from over. The genie is out of the bottle. And Aladdin has already reached a tipping point where one robot controls more wealth than any person or country. But as Aladdin's AI capabilities continue to grow, and with its rate of control rising by another $1 trillion to $2 trillion in new assets every year, it looks inevitable that Wall Street's secret weapon could end up owning everything, and we end up owning nothing. So what do you think? Are you indifferent, surprised, angry, afraid, or have a different point of view? And if you found this interesting, if not a little alarming, before you go, do subscribe so I can keep you updated with more news on the exploits and adventures of Aladdin.
There we go. That's from Truth Matters. Good name. Thanks, Truth Matters. I alluded to this before, but we did not explore it. This is 2024, the year AI gets real, from Axios, which is a technology publication. 2024 will be the year the AI industry gets serious about trying to deliver results across a wide slice of business and life, moving beyond the hype surrounding the successes of ChatGPT and chipmaker NVIDIA. Successes according to whom? I assume they mean financial successes in raising money, not successes in terms of providing value for the human race. That they have certainly not done. Why it matters. Everyone using AI will be looking for proof that it's making their life or work better following 2023 surges of enthusiasm and fear. AI providers are hunting for profitable business models that can support expensive to run generative AI systems. Oh, they're hunting for profitable business models. What is a profitable AI business model? App slavery, passive income. You work, I'm passive. Your work is my income. This is pure corporate slavery they're developing here. None of this is for you. Business leaders want to move beyond AI brainstorming and pilot phases and begin offering leaps in efficiency, productivity, and creativity. Business leaders do, huh? Business leaders, suicidal business leaders, megalomaniac business leaders, psychopath business leaders. That's what psychopaths want. We might as well do what psychopaths want. The big picture, the industry's rise in the second half of 2023 created a mismatch between AI's sky's the limit potential, ugh, and its challenging realities, uh, hallucinating chatbots, hard to obtain GPU chips, potentially huge liabilities around copyright, and many other concerns about bias and accuracy. With the arrival of smaller and specialized AI models, and the availability of more AI tools on mobile devices, God help us, the landscape could improve, and the wide deployment of multimodal AI, which works seamlessly with both text and images, could provide more excitement for users. Not you. Like, you got to understand, this is them talking about life on Earth when we're gone. This is not for app slavery. This is for the people with privilege. This is the future of people in the upper class and the oligarchs. This is the future they see for themselves when your very existence is denied in World War III, which will be the AI war. It's the war that's going on right now. And just like all over the world, when we die, it's just going to be the cost of war, the cost of doing business, collateral damage, whatever you want to call it, terrorism. You can call it whatever we want, but we'll do the dying right here in America. Rest assured, World War III is not going to stay off our turf. It's going to be coming right here to you. Or we could try and stop it. We could try and stop the corporate wars. We could try and stop the banker wars. We could just refuse to participate any longer in app slavery and shut down the corporations, chase them from our nation, and imprison the oligarchs that don't run for their lives to somewhere else. And then hunt them down for crimes against humanity, just like we did the Nazis after World War II, allegedly, sometimes. So I should show you just this morning one of the headlines. Where is this one? I want to show you. One of the headlines is that the New York Times is suing OpenAI and Microsoft over their AI. So while you are enslaved as an app slave right now, let's show you the article over here on my New York Times. The Times sues OpenAI and Microsoft over AI use of copyrighted work. Millions of articles from the New York Times were used to train chatbots that now compete with it, the lawsuit said. So understand something here. The people, as Whitney Webb told you, that are developing the AI tools right now are the worst people in the world. They're the most unscrupulous, careless, narcissistic, psychotic people in the world that are literally willing to risk the future of the human race for their narcissistic purposes and willingly and knowingly enslave humans in the singularity without our informed consent or with our informed consent. Either way, it's wrong. They're literally hacking our human consciousness with their artificial intelligence, presenting to us markets that aren't markets, businesses that aren't businesses, communities that aren't communities, and they can take any of it away from us anytime they want. We have no power. So we're depending upon the worst people in the world, the CEOs of multinational corporations. We're depending on the worst people in the world, Sam Altman and his ilk, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, all these monopolist, anti-human monsters that act as kings with immunity to destroy us, to destroy humanity, to destroy our world. And we have no say in any of it, according to them. We're according to this new security state that is on the cusp of starting, we'll have no longer any access to a free and open internet. Things could change radically, radically. And your government sold you out in total. It's a fact. I mean, they did us a favor in a way by inculcating app slavery around the world, just because they showed us exactly who they are. Now, there can be no question. There can be no question that this entire sociological operation, this global sociological operation of app slavery that's being perpetrated by Uber and DoorDash and BlackRock and SoftBank, monsters, fucking monsters, making us their human lab rats. Well, is the New York Times going to sit around and be plagiarized? No, New York Times ain't going to be app slaves. New York Times AI is not going to be app slaved to OpenAI's uh, AI. Corporations, national governments, it's a war now. It's an AI war because this is just pirating software. This is just data piracy. This is just data reuse. This is just learning from humanity and then spitting it out in a way to exploit people. Exploit people with dog shit content that's not from humans. Exploit people with fraudulent content that's not fact checked. Biased search results. Biased work. Yeah, I'm fucking live. I'm very live, Polly Prissy Pants. I'm smiling just for you. Am I live? Oh, you made me pull my headphones out. I got so excited there, Polly Prissy Pants. So, New York Times doesn't want to be defrauded by OpenAI, but you should be. You should be. And who else has OpenAI? All the wealthy kids and wealthy families who are competing with your kids, the school districts, everything else. What else? What else do we got going on in our world? Check this out. Corporate fraud. Do you like corporate fraud? Glitch Dash loves him some corporate fraud. Check this out. Gift cards, dirty secret. Billions go unspent each year. So the fraud of gift cards is that they don't get redeemed, and so corporations just make free money and get to claim it because now that it's digital, people lose the cards, everything else. Uh, so Americans are expected to spend nearly 30 billion on gift cards this holiday season. The average value of unused gift cards is $187 per person, a total of 23 billion. That's for the 47% of US adults that had at least one unspent, or 47% of US adults had at least one unspent gift card or voucher. Man, these corporations, these corporations are having the absolute time of human history at your expense. This is just a playground of corporate fraud. All of it, not some of it, all of it. Here's this. This is your future. What's going to happen if the oligarchy? Uh, don't we all, Polly Prissy Pants? We all need us some unexpired gift cards. Uh, Phone apps might lead drivers astray in rural Oregon as routes close in winter. Yeah, people die all the time by following their GPS blindly. You cannot, you cannot trust corporate AI for anything because there's no safety built in. You don't know if that AI driving you down the road is 50% accurate or 100%, or nothing's 100%. Yeah, 50% accurate or 70% accurate or 80% accurate. You don't know. You're no longer in control of anything. You're no longer guiding your own life. Your brain's been hacked, your reality's been hacked. You're not perceiving the world around you with truth. And that means, just like with these shitty gig apps, that you and your neighbor will have nothing in common. You and your neighbor will be perceiving completely different worlds, and that's why we see these gig tube people over and over, righteously and rightfully, talking about how the consumers don't understand them and don't give them fair tips. Well, that's the way the game was created. The game was created not just so that the consumers don't understand the app slaves. The game was created so that consumers don't even know the app slaves. You have to know somebody to respect them or disrespect them. They're completely isolated from the app slaves in every way, shape, and form. And all the tenets of tipping and a tipping culture, as much as one might exist, are violated. It's a system created for failure in every way, shape, and form. But what it doesn't fail is to turn people against each other, to turn the addicted and fleeced and gouged consumers against these enslaved and defrauded app slaves, and put the local businesses out of business altogether while they monopolize the entire market and destroy local business for the corporate AI system uh, built to just mass enslave us. This is the vision of how you manage humans. That's why they've been selling this over and over. That we want, oh, we want a gig app for nurses. We want a gig app for this. They want every single category of human being to be standard and replaceable on demand. So, uh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, listen, this is probably not the time to worry about our cholesterol, Polly Prissy Pants. Now's the time to let our hair down. Now is the time to let our hair down for sure. Uh, this is serious, serious stuff. I mean, the fact that our government has been wholly infiltrated and replaced by organized crime and corporate AI and oligarchs should be terrifying to you. The fact that all of the things that have been getting worse and worse are allowed to get worse because they think we're going to be gone soon. The reason they're okay with us being homeless is because they think the homeless will be gone soon. The reason they're okay with us being enslaved and defrauded is they don't expect ever to be accountable to what they're doing to us. Remember, wasn't it Lethal Weapon, right? Diplomatic immunity. Diplomatic immunity. That's what Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg and Sam Altman and all the other insane oligarchs, Elon Musk, all these people that act like kings who are nobodies, just heirs to organized crime fortunes. That's all they are. Where do you think Musk's money came from? Where do you think the Kennedys' money came from? Organized crime. And we're the marks. We are the proletariat, and they see these, as you heard uh, Whitney Webb say so clearly. A lot of these people wish to bring the end times upon us for their own personal agendas, and that should also be terrifying, because again, because we the people here, the people of the world, not just one nation, one set of fake borders, we the people of Earth uh, deserve human rights, which means that we deserve truth, we deserve transparency, we deserve equal justice. And all of that has been taken away from us uh, with lies and crime. Some of us, like those of us in the United States that grew up believing in freedom or thinking that we were free or wanting to be free sometime in the future, may also be very upset about this because what they figured out here with technology is a way to trap people, in a way to trap their minds, to hack their minds, to infiltrate their communities, to infiltrate their personal lives, to give them a slave phone, a slave device that they become personally and physically attached to at all times. It's a corporate dream come true, but it's the dream of monsters. It's the dream of absolute fucking monsters. How can anything that you are doing in the world be more important than what is happening right here today? The answer is it can't. That is the answer. There is absolutely nothing that supersedes the opportunity today that you have to share reality with your fellow members of the human race while you still can. Hey, listen, there's nothing wrong with listening to the Backstreet Boys. By the way, Backstreet Boys were in the movie called "This Is the End" or "The End of the World" with all the comedians in it. The Backstreet Boys were part of the Armageddon of that world. I doubt that we'll get a great big monster. I don't think our Armageddon is going to be as fun as their Armageddon or as interesting uh, as their Armageddon. I think the movies get a better Armageddon than we do. One thing I want to show you. This is a real good illustrative piece that we'll just watch a small part of. I don't want to get these people are probably a type that would do like a copyright strike kind of thing, or I get searched out by the AI. By the way, anybody that's making any money off YouTube, you better not plan to do that for long. They're certainly going to be able to clamp down on any free speech or any monetary gain on YouTube. So this person is a person that you will see often if you look at corporate technology. There's a woman named Kathy Wood, and there's not a lot of women in technology, so she sticks out, and she's become a prominent voice. But like the rest of them, uh, she's not what she appears to be. She's just a con artist. And Jake Tran, who does some interesting stuff here. Jake Tran did a video on him, and I'll link this so that you can watch this for yourself, and you absolutely should.
Was an investing genius. Her investment from ARK and its ETFs.
Let's for Jake. All right, so let's see. I'm going to share this so that you guys can watch it later. That's good. And the world's best con artist, Kathy Wood. And you can hear her do like all the other fake analysts on the fake uh, financial news shows, these fawning reviews of bullshit technology. And it's nauseating as shit. So this is, here's the link here for that, and let's take a look at the intro here. I'll chunk this up pretty good. I don't know what Jake Tran's policy is here. Let's see. Let's hack this up a little bit so that if I do this, maybe I'll be less likely to get.
On February 2021, we published a video on this channel calling out the famous investor Kathy Wood. At the time, everyone and their mom thought Kathy was an investing genius. Her investment from ARK and its ETFs were going up and up and up, with $60 billion of the massive money in it. And her claim to fame was pitching herself as this genius tech investor by making these stupidly wild predictions about how Tesla was going to go this high, or how this tech stock was going to go this high.
This stock is heading for $7,000 over the next 5 years, is very high. And the longer the base, you say 5 years, the longer the base, the bigger the breakout.
At 7,000 plus versus 1,900 now.
So basically, she was right once, along with a bazillion other people, but she took credit for it because I guess she knows the right people. So if you go through this, what you find is that she's horrifically unsuccessful, and that in general, she loses the mass amount of her clients' money without consequences. It's extremely nauseating.
Today, no one is mad at Kathy for anything. No lawsuits, no hates. No one even knows they got. But Jake, I mean the entire market has been sideways. No risk, no worry, right? Maybe she really did believe that these tech stocks were gonna go to the moon. At least she's in the arena trying stuff. Can we really know that she had bad intent? Just listen to her talk, she sounds like a nice caring mom. It's not her fault.
Yeah. So there's always excuses, right? Why? But the fact is, the performance doesn't lie. She's never made anybody any money, but except for herself.
They're sloppy, they're not good at committing fraud.
The people who get caught are actually pretty bad at fraud. They don't have a good end game. They didn't think this through. They don't really know how to trick people. They just kind of, get excited, create some hype, but they have no idea what they're doing. But the more sophisticated fraudsters are the people who never get into any sort of trouble like Kathy would.
Which makes Kathy one of the best of them all. Tens of billions lost, and yet she's still a multi-millionaire, and yet no one is up in arms. And now it looks like she's trying to do it all over again, and that's why we're making this video. And you know what the real nail in the coffin is that we just found out? Is that Kathy Wood's mentor is none other than Bill Hwang. Ah yes, you might remember Bill Hwang as the disgraced fund manager of Archegos Capital Management that lost $20 billion in just 2 days and still walked away with all his fees, just like his mentee Kathy.
It was fraud.
And then got indicted on fraud and racketeering.
Wang, along with Archegos CFO, were charged by federal prosecutors with racketeering, conspiracy, securities fraud, and wire fraud.
This is the guy that provided the seed capital for Kathy's ETFs. After all, if I wanted to rip off the public, this would be the only mentor I would want. Stay dangerous, subscribe for more, and let's get into it.
So this lady made a career off of calling Tesla successful, and then all her other bets failed, but she just kept going around telling people that she called Tesla, and she lost everybody massive amounts of money, as you saw.
Okay, so if you've read any of my books in the past, .com Secrets taught you how to build a funnel.
The countless millions, the countless hundreds of millions for herself, which is what the fraudsters do, right? Remember that the founders of DoorDash cashed out with around $2.2 to $2.4 billion each for coming up with a corporate AI fraud scheme. They cashed out at $2.2 to $2.4 billion each. They've never had a stake in whether the company was successful or not after that, other than whatever their evil global, Dr. Evil megalomania dreams might come up with. They bought triplet mansions in Florida, so I suppose they could have like sharks with lasers and moats or something to that effect. But certainly they have no interest in anything other than their own personal interest and their own personal survival, which does not include us and never has. Sounds good, Paula. You can, if you ever want to do that, you should email me. Anybody can email me at this email right here. This stuff just, this stuff is just exhausting, is it not? Is it not exhausting to know the truth of what's happening to humanity and watch it happening before our very eyes? Yet to know that 99% of our fellow human beings are asleep to this reality, or are lost to this matrix. It's tragic. It's an atrocity. This is what has happened. Is an atrocity to humanity, and we got to stop it. Again, we don't have to cut off the heads of people. We just got to kill corporations. We got to kill oligarch immunity. We got to kill corporate immunity. We got to kill qualified immunity. All people must be held responsible for their actions, both civilly and criminally. It can't just be we're the criminals and they're the civils, which is the way it is right now. Because their crimes are genocide. Their crimes are genocide. Ours. And don't think that World War III, especially the AI war, is going to be bound by borders. especially with the crimes that the whatever stands for the American Empire. The American empires all over the world, in everybody's country, don't think that some of them don't think that the American government or the American military are occupiers or the bad guys. We don't live in a free country. We live under anarcho-fascism. The corporations are ruling us. They make up their own rules. They've enslaved us, and it's up to us if we want to be free or not. That's the way it is. And look, the other things they want to do are give you AI services instead of human services. So you're going to get AI for your healthcare. You're not going to get regular doctors. You're going to get AI for your banking and for your service. But here's the thing. None of these things are human, and none of these things take accountability. You have no recourse. So if you get killed by the AI, if you get decapitated by the AI, if you get fired by the AI, if you get socially banned by the AI, there's no recourse. There's no humanity here at all. Again, only a literally insane person would allow their consciousness to be hacked by corporate AI. You have to be asleep and unconscious to be in that state, because nobody that's awake could possibly mistake the dog shit fascist terror that comes through apps as our reality. There's never been a reality that's as bad as what can be served up to us with corporate AI, and we're gobbling it up. We're gobbling it up because we've been trained to gobble it up. It's a rough deal. It's a rough deal. This has been a lot of really good information. There's a lot to chew on here. I have watched the things that we watched together today. I've watched multiple times already. So I would not blame you if you went back and watched them multiple times as well. This is important stuff to know. I would trust Whitney Webb over and above virtually anyone out there outside of myself, or maybe a few other people I'd have to really pick out. There are a few journalists out there that ruthlessly tell the truth. Now, you also might want to notice she lives in Chile, I believe, with her children. I still live in the occupied city of Portland, in the occupied state of Oregon, in the occupied United States territory. So that sucks for me. Sucks for all of us, but here we are. Got nowhere to go as of yet. So let's stick it out. You guys are the heroes. You're the ones that can do it. It's not going to be one yakking old man. It's not going to be even the young, vibrant mother, Whitney Webb. It's going to be you. And so thank you, everybody, to spending time this morning. This has been Surviving AI with JTB. That's me. Don't get in the 2024 AI genocide van. Don't do it. Don't get in the 2024 AI genocide van. There's no candy in there. It's a bad place for bad people that do bad things. Do not take the free AI. Do not take the candy. Don't sign up for your own genocide. Thanks, Simple Toaster. Thanks, Polly Pritch Pants. Thanks, Jared D, for hanging out. Christ brings a sword. Stephen Arrow, of course. Oh, yeah. Let's all get some rest. Thanks, Brian. We'll talk to you later. Thanks, Glitch Dash, you bastard. Love you. All right, buddy. We'll see you later.